You ever have one of those moments where you think, okay, maybe I'm losing my mind, but then you convince yourself you're just overthinking? Yeah, that's been my life for the past 6 months. I, 34M, never thought I'd be the guy posting on the internet about my relationship drama. I'm a pretty private person, the kind who doesn't share deep personal stuff unless I'm really close to someone. But here I am, because I've reached the point where I don't know if I'm justified in how I've been acting, or if I've turned into a complete asshole. My wife, Emma, 32F, and I have been married for 8 years. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue when we were both in our mid-20s. And from the start, she was one of those people you just can't help but notice. She has this energy about her. Smart, funny, confident, but not in a way that screams for attention. I fell hard, and we moved in together after a year. Things were great for a long time. We worked well as a team. She's a nurse, I'm in IT. We built a comfortable life, had our routines, and honestly, I thought we had one of those solid marriages people envy. Sure, we had arguments like any couple, but nothing earth-shattering. Then, about 6 months ago, I started noticing changes. Small things at first. She started coming home later than usual, saying her shifts ran over. That wasn't unusual. Nursing can be unpredictable, but it was happening more frequently. She became glued to her phone, turning the screen away when I walked into the room. When I asked about it, she'd say she was just catching up on work group chats or scrolling through social media. And then came the secrecy. Emma had always been open with me. We knew each other's phone passcodes, no big deal. But one night, I went to grab her phone from the nightstand to check the time. My phone was charging across the room, and it was locked with a passcode I didn't know. When I asked her about it the next morning, she got defensive. Oh, my hospital updated security. We have to keep work messages private now. That sounded plausible, except why lock everything instead of just the work apps? I told myself not to jump to conclusions. She's in a high-stress job, maybe she just wants some privacy. Maybe she's decompressing in ways I don't understand. But in the back of my mind, something felt off. The turning point came one Saturday when she said she was going to a girls' night with her friend Laura. I thought nothing of it until Laura texted me later asking if Emma was feeling better. I was confused. I texted back, "Better from what?" Laura replied, "She said she couldn't come tonight because she had a migraine." I was just checking on her. My stomach dropped. I didn't confront Emma right away. I wanted to see where this was going. She came home around midnight, smelling faintly of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. When I asked about her night, she smiled and said, "Oh, just wine and gossip with the girls." I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I asked her casually if she'd spoken to Laura. She said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "That's interesting, because Laura texted me about your migraine." Her face froze for a second, just a split second, but I caught it. Then she launched into the story about how she was going to cancel but felt better at the last minute, so she went out with some other friends instead. It didn't add up. From there, I started noticing more inconsistencies. Random receipts in her purse from places we'd never been together. A new dress I'd never seen her wear at home. She started wearing more makeup on days she claimed to have long shifts. I finally told my best friend Mark about it, and he said, "Man, you need to get some answers before you lose your mind." So last month, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a small GPS tracker in her car. I know it's invasive and shady, but I was desperate for clarity. The first week, nothing unusual. Hospital, grocery store, gas station. Then one Thursday, she told me she was covering a late shift. The tracker showed her car parked outside an upscale restaurant downtown for 2 hours. Then at an apartment building on the other side of the city for another 3. When she came home at 1 a.m., she smelled like wine and expensive perfume. I didn't confront her that night. I wanted more than just a one-time thing before blowing up my marriage. And last Friday, I got exactly that. She told me she was going to visit her mom for the weekend. But when I checked the tracker the next morning, her car was still in the city, at the same apartment building from before. I drove there, parked a block away, waited. Around noon, I saw her come out. She wasn't alone. She was with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, well-dressed, maybe late 30s. He had his arm around her waist. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. I snapped a couple of pictures with my phone, but the moment I saw them kiss before getting into his car, I felt my chest tighten so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't follow them. I just drove home in a daze. That was 3 days ago. I haven't said a word to her yet. She's been acting totally normal, making small talk, kissing me goodnight, as if she's not living this double life. And now, I'm stuck. Do I confront her with everything I've got? Do I try to catch them together again? Do I tell her I know and watch her try to spin it? Part of me wants to blow up right now, demand answers, and throw her stuff out. Another part of me is scared that once I do this, there's no going back. And here's the thing, I've been distant. I've been cold since this all started. She's asked me a few times if something's wrong, and I've shrugged it off. So now I'm sitting here wondering, am I being the asshole for letting this drag on and collecting evidence instead of just confronting her like an adult? Because the longer I wait, the more I feel like I'm becoming someone I don't recognize. I woke up the morning after seeing Emma with that guy, and honestly, it felt like my brain was on fire. I couldn't shake the image of them, her smiling, leaning into him like I was invisible. It was like a punch to the gut I never saw coming. I poured myself some coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared blankly out the window. I kept thinking about all the little signs I had ignored before. The secret phone passcode, the late nights, the lies. How could I have been so blind? Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. For the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. That day, Emma was cheerful, humming while she cooked dinner. I watched her from the couch, heart pounding, waiting for the moment I'd lose control and confront her. But I didn't. Instead, I played it cool. I asked about her day like everything was normal. She smiled, told me about a funny patient at the hospital, and casually mentioned she was planning to visit her mom next weekend. I forced a smile. That sounds nice. I wanted to believe that was true, that maybe all of this was a mistake or a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, I checked her phone while she was in the shower. It was still locked, of course, but I found a way, just enough to glance through a few texts on the notifications. There they were, messages from a man named Daniel, full of inside jokes, plans, and what felt like flirtations. Emma was telling him she missed him. She sent pictures of herself smiling. I felt sick. The worst part, I remembered the times I told her I loved her, the nights I waited up when she was late, the weekends I rearranged plans to be with her, and she was secretly sending those texts. The next day, I tried to get through to her. I said, "Emma, can we talk?" She nodded but looked distracted. "I know about Daniel," I blurted out. She froze, eyes wide. "What? How?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her and waited. Then she broke down, said it started a few months ago when work got overwhelming, and Daniel was there to listen, that it was just emotional support, that she never meant for it to go further. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But how do you believe someone who's been lying for months? I told her I needed space. I wasn't ready to decide what to do next. Over the next few weeks, she tried to make things right. Flowers, apologies, promises, but the trust was shattered. One night, I caught her phone unlocked while she slept. I hesitated, but I saw a message that made my blood boil. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You mean everything to me." It wasn't from Daniel. It was from another man. Now I'm not just dealing with a single betrayal. It's layers deep. I confronted her again, and this time, she didn't deny it. She admitted she was seeing multiple people, said she didn't know what she wanted, that she felt lost, and that she hated herself for hurting me. That broke me in a way nothing else could. I don't know what I am anymore. Am I the asshole for wanting to hold on to something that might already be gone? For still hoping she'll come back to me? Or am I the asshole for feeling like I need to walk away before I destroy myself completely? I'm tired. I'm confused. I'm angry. But most of all, I'm alone in this mess. If you've ever been betrayed or caught in a love that's crumbling, you know the nightmare I'm living. I don't know how this ends, but I do know one thing. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. The days after that confrontation felt like walking through a storm with no shelter. I kept asking myself, How did it get this bad? How did my sister become a stranger? Emma moved out a week later. The apartment felt emptier than I expected. Like losing her wasn't just about space, but a part of me I hadn't realized was tethered to her. I spent nights scrolling through old photos. When she was a kid, laughing on family trips, the moments I thought meant forever. But forever wasn't enough. Not for her. The silence in the house was deafening. I caught myself reaching for my phone to text her, then stopping mid-finger. What would I even say? One afternoon, I got a message from Marcus, my best friend. "You okay, man?" Just 2 words, but somehow they meant the world. I told him everything. The betrayals, the heartbreak, the rage. He listened without judgment. "You're not the asshole," he said firmly. "You gave her love, trust, and she broke it. That's on her. But the truth is, it still hurts, like a wound that won't heal." Then, out of nowhere, Emma called. Her voice was shaky, full of regret.
"Jake, I'm sorry."
I was lost, and I didn't know how to be better. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to scream, cry, forgive, and shut her out. All at once. We talked for hours. No promises, no easy answers. Just 2 broken people trying to find a way back from the wreckage. It's been months now. We're trying cautiously. Therapy, honest conversations, boundaries. It's messy, slow, and painful, but it's something. So, am I the asshole for wanting to give her a chance despite everything? For holding on to hope that family means more than mistakes? Or am I the asshole for knowing when to let go? For protecting my own heart from being crushed again? Maybe there's no clear answer. Maybe that's life. If you felt torn between love and betrayal, hope and heartbreak, you're not alone. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched you, if it kept you hooked till the end, hit that subscribe button now. Don't miss out on more real stories that dig deep into the messy, complicated human heart. Because here, every voice matters, and every story is worth sharing. I never thought a single wedding could completely upend my life, but here I am, questioning every decision I've ever made. My name's Emily, I'm 28, and I live in a quiet suburban town in Ohio. I work in marketing, have a small group of friends I trust, and generally try to keep my life simple. But apparently, life had other plans. It all started with my older brother, Daniel. Daniel has always been the golden child. Handsome, charming, effortlessly successful. Everyone loves him. I, on the other hand, have always been the quiet, dependable one. It's not a bad place to be, until family gatherings turn into competitions, and suddenly every little thing you do is compared against someone else. I've learned to accept it, but it stings. So when Daniel announced his engagement to Sarah, a woman I'd only met a handful of times, I was excited for him, truly. He deserved happiness. Sarah seemed nice, polite, and genuinely in love with my brother. I wanted to support him. I wanted to be the sister who showed up, smiled, and cheered them on. That was my goal, at least initially. The wedding planning started months in advance. Daniel and Sarah were going for a small, intimate ceremony, only close friends and immediate family. Perfect. I thought I could handle it. But then came the family seating arrangement discussion, and everything began to unravel. Our family is complicated. My mom remarried years ago, and her new husband, Greg, has 2 kids from a previous marriage. My dad passed away when I was 17, and Daniel's been closer to our mom's side for most of his life. That means technically the immediate family circle was huge, and everyone had opinions. Sarah's mother, Linda, made it clear she wanted to sit with her daughter's friends and relatives. Naturally, I tried to remain neutral, not wanting to cause tension. But things got complicated when Sarah casually mentioned, "Emily, I think your boyfriend should sit on my side so we can mix everyone together." Now, I had been dating Alex for 2 years. Alex is wonderful, funny, supportive, a little shy, but one of those people who instantly makes everyone feel at ease. He wasn't a problem at all. But apparently, seating him near Sarah's mother's table was a violation of some invisible wedding etiquette. My brother, Daniel, wanted to keep everyone happy. He said, "Just let it go, this one night. No big deal." I agreed. What's a little compromise if it keeps the wedding smooth? Then came the day of the rehearsal dinner. Everything seemed fine until my cousin, Jenny, who's notoriously dramatic, decided to comment loudly on how Alex didn't fit with the rest of Sarah's family. I brushed it off, thinking, who cares? It's dinner, not a court trial. But apparently, everyone else started to whisper, exchange looks, and suddenly, I could feel tension bubbling under the surface. That night, I tried talking to Sarah privately. I said, hey, I don't think seating arrangements matter that much. Alex isn't going to cause problems. She smiled politely but said, Emily, I appreciate that, but my mom is very particular. I just want everything perfect. I nodded, but inside, I felt the first pang of unease. Fast forward to the wedding day. The ceremony itself was beautiful, flowers, vows, the works. Everyone smiled, cried a little, and I genuinely felt happy for them. But during the reception, things started to spiral. It began with Alex. Someone accidentally spilled wine on him while he was standing near Sarah's mother's table. He jumped back, trying to apologize, and the tension escalated. Linda, Sarah's mother, loudly muttered, some people just can't behave properly. Everyone heard her. I could see my brother shifting uncomfortably. Then came the cake-cutting incident. Daniel handed Sarah the knife first, then me and Alex. Suddenly, Sarah's sister whispered, why are they even together? Emily's boyfriend shouldn't be here. I froze. I wanted to disappear. Alex's face went pale. He tried to laugh it off, but the room was buzzing with whispered judgments. By the end of the night, what was supposed to be a celebration of love had turned into a minefield. Alex was quiet, I was on edge, and Daniel seemed exhausted trying to mediate every tiny comment. I left the reception feeling angry, embarrassed, and unsure if I'd handled anything correctly. The next morning, things got worse. Sarah sent me a text, Emily, I hope you understand why your behavior yesterday upset me. Alex caused more drama than necessary. I don't think this is acceptable for future family events. I was floored. I hadn't argued with anyone, hadn't caused a scene, and yet somehow I was the problem. I tried calling her to explain, but she didn't pick up. I called Daniel. He said, Sarah is sensitive, Em. Maybe just give her space. I nodded, but inside I was furious. I didn't do anything wrong. Why am I being punished? Then came the family group chat explosion. My aunt posted, Emily, maybe you should reconsider how you act in public. It reflects on your family. Comments piled up. My mom added, everyone makes mistakes, but Emily, I expected better from you. I felt trapped, like no matter what I said, it was wrong. I sat down, thinking, am I really the asshole here? I had no idea how a simple wedding could turn into this kind of judgment. I didn't start drama, didn't argue, and yet somehow I was the villain. So Reddit, I'm turning to you. Am I the asshole for existing at my brother's wedding with my boyfriend? Or is this a case of everyone overreacting? After the wedding, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts, missed calls, even a couple of emails from family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Every message felt like another judgment, another accusation. I tried to block out the noise, but it was impossible. Even Daniel seemed distant, too busy playing mediator between Sarah and everyone else. Alex was quiet too. He usually shrugged off family drama, but yesterday had shaken him. He didn't say much during breakfast, just sat there, picking at his eggs. I wanted to ask him how he felt, but the words got stuck. What if he blames me? Over the next few days, the tension didn't let up. My mom sent a long message about family expectations, subtly hinting that I had embarrassed her in front of Sarah's relatives. Aunt Jenny called again, practically screaming into the phone. Emily, you can't keep defending him. He doesn't belong here, and you should have known better. Every call, every message, felt like a punch to the stomach. I started replaying every moment in my head. The spilled wine, the whispered comments, the cake-cutting incident. Did I really do something wrong? I tried to rationalize. I hadn't yelled, I hadn't insulted anyone, but somehow the weight of collective judgment pressed down like a heavy blanket. I decided I needed to take a step back, so I went for a long walk around the neighborhood to clear my head. It was a crisp autumn morning. The leaves were turning golden. I thought about my relationship with Daniel. We had always been close, even though the comparisons and favoritism had sometimes hurt. I didn't want to ruin that bond. But the wedding had cracked something, a fissure I couldn't ignore. When I got home, I found Alex sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and gave me a small, nervous smile. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Everything feels heavy, like I can't breathe around my own family." He nodded slowly. "I get it. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this. But sometimes, family drama is a storm you just have to weather." I wanted to believe him, but the storm wasn't letting up. Over the next week, I got texts from Sarah. At first, they were polite. "Hope you're resting. I know yesterday was stressful." But soon, they turned passive-aggressive. "I wish you had handled Alex better. I don't want family events to be tense because of you." I tried to respond diplomatically, but each reply seemed to fuel the fire. Daniel texted me privately, "Emily, I know you feel attacked, but maybe just let Sarah cool off. She's stressed." Let Sarah cool off? My brother was essentially asking me to swallow my feelings, my embarrassment, my sense of being unfairly judged. And while I loved him, I couldn't stop thinking, why am I always the one expected to compromise? The breaking point came when my mom invited me over under the guise of a casual brunch. She wanted to talk about what happened at the wedding. I walked in, trying to be calm, and immediately felt the tension. She gave me a tight smile, then said, "Emily, we need to discuss your behavior. You embarrassed the family." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I didn't argue with anyone. I didn't yell. I sat quietly." Her eyes narrowed. "Quietly? That doesn't mean you didn't cause problems. Alex shouldn't have been there in that seat. It was disruptive. People noticed." I felt my chest tighten. "So, because someone spilled wine accidentally, and someone whispered suddenly I'm the problem? I didn't even start anything." She huffed, clearly frustrated. "You need to understand that family appearances matter. You can't just do whatever you want." I wanted to scream, "Mom, I've spent my whole life trying to be the good one, the quiet, dependable one. But why am I always the one held accountable when nothing is my fault?" She didn't respond. The silence was deafening. I left her house feeling heavier than ever. I called Alex, needing someone to validate that I wasn't imagining things. "I feel like I'm crazy," I said, voice trembling. "Everyone's turning on me." He was silent for a moment. "Emily, you're not crazy. They're just blinded by their own expectations. You can't control that. You can only control yourself." His words gave me a little comfort, but the storm outside my door didn't calm. Messages from Sarah kept coming, filled with veiled criticism. Daniel remained neutral but distant. My extended family whispered behind my back. By the end of the second week, I felt trapped in a cycle I couldn't escape. I started questioning every decision, every smile, every word, every small gesture, wondering if it would be twisted against me. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally. I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep walking on eggshells, constantly fearing the next judgment, the next whispered complaint. But how do you confront a family when they think they're right and you're the problem? Then, one evening, I got a message from Sarah that made my stomach drop. "Emily, maybe it's best if you step back from family events for a while. I think everyone will be happier that way." That was it. She was effectively pushing me out. My own brother's bride wanted me gone, because I existed, because I had a boyfriend, because I didn't conform to every tiny expectation. I sat on my couch, staring at my hands. Am I really the asshole? I didn't fight, I didn't scream, I didn't ruin the wedding. But somehow, here I was, painted as the villain in a story I never agreed to. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Every thought spiraled back to the wedding, to the messages, to Sarah's passive-aggressive notes, and my family's judgment. I felt trapped in a cycle that seemed impossible to escape. I decided to take a long walk again, hoping that the crisp autumn air would clear my head. As I walked through the park near my apartment, I replayed everything in my mind. The spilled wine, the whispered comments, the subtle glances. It hit me like a ton of bricks. No matter what I did, I could never satisfy everyone. I sat down on a bench trying to breathe. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Hey," his text read, "can we meet? I think we need to talk." I didn't hesitate. We met at our favorite coffee shop, the place where we'd celebrated birthdays, victories, and even heartbreaks over the years. He looked exhausted, but there was a sincerity in his eyes that I hadn't seen since before the wedding. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "I didn't realize how much this would affect you. I should have stood up more, and I failed." I blinked, trying to hold back the tears. "Daniel, it's not just about the wedding. It's everything. It's the constant judgment, the assumptions. It's like being trapped in someone else's story." He nodded. "I get it now, and I promise, moving forward, I'll be on your side, no matter what anyone else says." Hearing him say that lifted a weight off my shoulders, but it didn't erase the tension with Sarah and the rest of the family. I needed to set boundaries, finally. That evening, I called Sarah. My hands trembled as I dialed, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. "Emily, hi," she answered cautiously. "Sarah, I've thought a lot about everything," I began. "About the wedding, about your messages, about my family. And I need you to understand something. I'm not going to apologize for existing. I'm not going to apologize for being myself, or for living my life without constantly worrying about what everyone thinks." There was a long silence. Then she spoke quietly. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I thought I was protecting the family, but maybe I went too far." I took a deep breath. "It's not just about protecting the family. It's about respect. And I need you to respect me. If you can't, then maybe it's better for all of us to take a step back." Her voice cracked. I understand. I'll try. I really will." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief. I couldn't control how others would react, but I could control how I responded, and I had chosen my peace. The following days were still tense, but I held my ground. I spent more time with Daniel and Alex, reinforcing our bonds, and I finally allowed myself to stop fearing judgment from people who couldn't see beyond their own expectations. By the end of the month, the storm had calmed. Sarah sent a message apologizing again, this time without any passive aggressiveness. My mom reached out too, cautiously, and I responded politely but firmly, keeping my boundaries clear. I realized that family drama doesn't define me. I define me, and standing up for myself wasn't about being rude or confrontational. It was about protecting my own emotional well-being. Sitting on my couch that evening, I reflected on everything. The wedding, the chaos, the judgment, the fights, and the eventual understanding. I had learned that some battles are worth fighting, not to prove who's right or wrong, but to preserve your peace. I never thought a simple birthday could spiral into a life lesson I'd never forget. My name's Emma, I'm 28, and I've always been close to my younger brother, Liam. We grew up in a small town in Ohio. Our parents divorced when I was 10, and Liam was 7. Despite the chaos, Liam and I were inseparable. This year, Liam was turning 25, and I wanted to throw him a birthday party he'd actually remember. I rented a small hall, invited his closest friends, and even hired a local band he liked. Everything seemed perfect, until my stepmother, Karen, got involved. Karen had married my dad 5 years ago. I'd always tolerated her, but she had a way of inserting herself into situations that didn't concern her. The week before the party, she called me. "Emma," she said sweetly, "I've been thinking about Liam's birthday. I thought maybe we could do a family dinner instead of the party. It'd be more intimate, don't you think?" I froze. "Karen, I already booked the hall, invited everyone. It's going to be perfect for Liam." She sighed dramatically. "I just think it's too much. He's not a kid anymore. Plus, your father and I want a nice family evening. You know, proper manners, family time." I swallowed my frustration. "Karen, Liam wants a party with his friends. That's what he enjoys. I appreciate your input, but this is his day." Her tone hardened. "Emma, I know what's best for Liam. Don't make me out to be the villain here. I hung up, feeling a mixture of anger and guilt. Was I being selfish? Maybe. But deep down, I knew I was doing it for Liam. The day of the party, chaos struck. Karen showed up, uninvited guests in tow. She started subtly criticizing the decorations, the food, and even the music. Emma, are you sure this playlist is appropriate? Some of these songs aren't exactly family-friendly. I bit my tongue. I didn't want to ruin Liam's birthday by starting a fight. But the whispers, the side comments, the constant need to undermine me, it was unbearable. And then came the moment that pushed me over the edge. Liam's best friend, Jake, had brought a custom cake. Karen inspected it, wrinkled her nose, and loudly commented, "I don't think this cake is suitable. You know, maybe a simple chocolate cake would have been better." The room went silent. Liam looked at her, confused. His friends stared at me, waiting to see what I'd do. I took a deep breath. "Karen, this is Liam's day. He chose this cake. You can voice your opinion elsewhere, but right now we celebrate him." She looked shocked, then angry. "Emma, you're being ridiculous. I'm just trying to help." I shook my head. "No, you're trying to control, and I won't let you ruin this." The rest of the party was tense, but Liam enjoyed himself. His laughter, his excitement, and the happiness on his face reminded me why I'd gone through all the stress. But the story didn't end there. Karen sent my dad a long, accusatory text afterward, claiming I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone, and that I was overstepping boundaries. My dad, caught in the middle, didn't take sides but suggested I apologize to her for causing tension. I was torn. Should I apologize for standing up for my brother's happiness? Or should I maintain my boundaries and let the dust settle? And that's when I turned to Reddit. I posted, "Am I the asshole for refusing to let my stepmother control my brother's birthday party?" Comments started pouring in, and I realized I wasn't alone. People shared stories about boundary-pushing relatives, controlling family members, and moments when standing up for a loved one felt impossible but necessary. I was torn. Should I apologize for standing up for my brother's happiness? Or should I maintain my boundaries and let the dust settle? And that's when I turned to Reddit. I posted, "Am I the asshole for refusing to let my stepmother control my brother's birthday party?" Comments started pouring in, and I realized I wasn't alone. People shared stories about boundary-pushing relatives, controlling family members, and moments when standing up for a loved one felt impossible but necessary. After the birthday party, the tension with Karen didn't die down. It only grew. Every interaction with her felt like walking on a tightrope. Even small things like family dinners or casual conversations became battlegrounds. I tried to stay calm, but the constant undermining and subtle digs were exhausting. Liam noticed too. One evening, a week after the party, he pulled me aside while we were helping Dad unload groceries. "Emma, I know you're trying to protect me, but are you okay?" he asked, concern etched across his face. I sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Honestly, not really. Karen keeps trying to manipulate everything, and it's stressing me out. I can't just sit back and let her dictate our family life, but I also don't want to make things worse for you." Liam nodded slowly. "I get it, but I appreciate you standing up for me. I wouldn't have enjoyed that party if you hadn't." His words were comforting, but the reality hit hard. My family dynamics were messy, and Karen had a way of twisting situations to make herself look like the victim. 2 days later, my dad invited me to his office for a chat. "Emma, I think you need to be careful," he said gently. "Karen feels hurt by what happened at Liam's birthday. I know you were defending him, but she's taking it personally." I took a deep breath. "Dad, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm just trying to protect Liam's happiness. He has a right to enjoy his day without someone constantly criticizing him." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but she's your stepmother. Family harmony is important too." I felt a knot in my stomach. Family harmony? At what cost? My boundaries? My peace? The situation escalated when Karen started showing up unannounced at Liam's apartment, insisting on helping him with groceries, his laundry, even offering unsolicited advice on his work. Each visit ended in subtle arguments, and Liam began avoiding her altogether, which only fueled her anger. One evening, after yet another tense encounter, I sat with Liam and laid everything out. "Liam, we need to draw a line," I said. "Karen's behavior isn't acceptable, and it's affecting both of us. We can't let her control our lives." He nodded. "I know, Emma, but what if Dad doesn't support us?" I took his hand. "Then we support each other, and that's enough." We devised a plan: clear boundaries, polite but firm refusals, and avoiding unnecessary interactions. It wasn't easy. Karen tried to guilt trip us at every turn, accusing us of being ungrateful and disrespectful. But we stuck together, and slowly the tension eased. The real turning point came during the next family gathering. Karen attempted her usual criticisms, but this time, Liam spoke up. Stepmom, he said firmly. "I appreciate your concern, but this is my life, my decisions. Emma has been looking out for me, and I trust her judgment. You need to respect that." The room fell silent. Karen's face flushed red, but there was no arguing. For the first time, she realized we weren't going to back down. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We had stood our ground, defended our happiness, and maintained our dignity. Later that night, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, especially when it involves family. But boundaries are essential, and protecting the people you love sometimes means facing conflict head-on. As I sat there thinking, I knew the final part of this story would bring closure, not just with Karen, but with my own understanding of family, respect, and self-worth. The weeks following Liam's bold stand at the family gathering were tense but slowly stabilizing. Karen had not disappeared, but she seemed to realize her usual tactics wouldn't work anymore. I could see her trying to soften her approach, but I also stayed vigilant, knowing boundaries had to be maintained. One Friday evening, Liam and I decided to host a casual dinner at my place. Just the three of us. Me, Liam, and our dad. I wanted to create an environment where calm conversation could replace the constant undercurrent of tension. As Karen arrived, I greeted her with a polite smile. "Welcome, Karen. Glad you could make it." She gave a tight smile back. "Thanks, Emma. I hope this goes smoothly." I guided her to the living room, and Dad followed, carrying a tray of drinks. Liam and I exchanged a glance. This was our chance to test the waters, to establish normalcy while keeping control. The dinner began with small talk, surprisingly pleasant. Karen commented on the food I had prepared, complimenting the flavors without any sarcastic undertone. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. After a while, the conversation naturally shifted to Liam's recent achievements at work. Karen tried to offer advice, but Liam interrupted calmly. "Thanks for your input, Karen. I appreciate it, but I've got it covered. Emma has been guiding me well." The room was silent for a moment. I could sense Karen bristling internally, but outwardly she nodded. That simple acknowledgement, our unity in protecting our space, was powerful. By the end of the night, we had established a fragile peace. Karen realized she couldn't manipulate or dominate anymore, and Liam felt empowered knowing I had his back. Dad looked relieved, too, appreciating that his children could assert themselves while still maintaining respect for family ties. Over the next few months, our family dynamic shifted. Karen began limiting her unannounced visits. She started communicating through Dad and even sent occasional texts checking in, instead of showing up and criticizing. Liam grew more confident in asserting his boundaries, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing I had helped him stand strong without resentment. The most significant change, however, came within me. I realized that protecting those I love doesn't make me selfish. It makes me responsible. And standing up to someone who has historically tried to dominate doesn't mean I lack respect. It means I value mutual understanding and healthy relationships. One evening, as Liam and I relaxed on the porch, he looked at me with gratitude. "Emma, I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything, for always being there, for having my back, for teaching me that standing up isn't wrong." I smiled, feeling a warmth that came from knowing my actions had real impact. "Liam, family isn't always easy, But love doesn't mean letting people walk over you. I'm proud of you for standing up too. Life didn't magically become perfect. Challenges with Karen would likely continue, but we now had a framework to navigate them. Boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect became our guiding principles. Reflecting on the journey, I realized that standing firm for the happiness and well-being of those you care about is one of the most courageous acts of love. Conflict is inevitable, but handling it with integrity and care strengthens bonds rather than breaking them. And as a final thought for anyone listening to this story, standing up for yourself and your loved ones isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's how we create a life where respect, love, and peace coexist. If you connected with this story, if it made you think about your own boundaries and the importance of standing up for what matters, then you'll want to join our community. Subscribe to the channel now and don't miss more real, emotional stories like this. Stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us that family isn't always easy, but it's worth protecting. The uninvited guest. It all started on a Thursday morning when I received an unexpected text from my sister, Sophie. "Hey, we need to talk. Mom's coming to stay with you for a while." I froze. My mom hadn't been in my life for over 10 years. Not a single birthday, not a single holiday. And now, out of nowhere, she was planning to move into my apartment? I stared at the message for several minutes, rereading it over and over. I knew Sophie meant well, but this felt like a setup for disaster. After pacing around my living room, I called her. "Sophie, what do you mean Mom's coming to stay with me? Why?" She sounded nervous. "She's sick, Emma. She doesn't have anyone else. She asked me to reach out." I clenched my jaw. "Sick? She walked out of my life 10 years ago, Sophie. I don't owe her anything. And now she wants to waltz into my apartment." I know, she said quickly. "But she's really serious this time. Please at least meet her. Hear her out." I hung up, feeling my blood pressure rise. This wasn't just about inconvenience, it was about boundaries, trust, and the years of absence. By the evening, my mom showed up at my door. I barely recognized her. Older, frilier, her hair streaked with gray. She smiled weakly. "Emma, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said softly, "but I need a place to stay while I get treatment. I promise I'll respect your space." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shut the door and never look back. But part of me, a small, guilty part, felt sorry for her. I took a deep breath. "Come in. We'll talk," I said, though I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The first week of having Mom in my apartment was tense. Every sound she made, every word, felt like a test of my patience. I tried to be polite, offering her meals and helping with small tasks, but the constant presence in my space was suffocating. On the second day, she started telling stories about my childhood, stories I had buried for a reason. "Remember when you fell off your bike?" she said, her voice trembling. "I felt so awful when I left. I never wanted to hurt you." I clenched my fists, my throat tight. "Yeah, I remember. You weren't there when I needed you, Mom. You missed everything." She flinched but didn't respond. I could see guilt written all over her face. But guilt wasn't enough to erase 10 years of absence. Things escalated when she tried to rearrange my apartment without asking. "This place feels cramped," she said one morning. "Let's move the couch over here and maybe put your books there." "Mom, stop. This is my space. I don't need you rearranging everything," I said firmly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I just want to help. You never let me in, Emma." I thought maybe. "I don't want help that comes with manipulation," I interrupted. It was clear that boundaries would be the biggest challenge. Every day felt like walking on eggshells. I was torn between empathy and anger, wanting to support her while protecting myself from the emotional chaos she brought. During a rare quiet evening, I called Sophie. "Sophie, I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice shaking. "She's here, but it's like she's trying to erase the last 10 years. She's sick, Emma. Maybe this is her way of making amends," Sophie replied gently. "But you have to protect yourself too. You're allowed to set limits." That night, Mom approached me hesitantly. "Emma, I know this is hard. I want to be close to you. Can we try? I looked at her, my emotions in turmoil. Could I forgive her fully? Could I allow her back into my life without losing myself in the process? I realized then that this wasn't just about space or convenience. It was about trust, rebuilding a bond that had been shattered. And trust, I knew, would take time that I wasn't sure I had. Days turned into weeks, and slowly small breakthroughs appeared. A shared meal without arguments, a quiet morning over coffee, a genuine smile exchanged. But the shadow of the past was never far. Every conversation could trigger old wounds. I started keeping a journal, noting my feelings, my boundaries, my fears. It became a lifeline, a way to navigate the emotional storm without losing myself. And one evening, while writing, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and love doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. Mom seemed to sense this too. She began respecting my space, asking before doing anything, and listening when I spoke. The tension eased slightly, but the emotional intensity remained. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, empathy, and unwavering self-respect. By the end of the second week, I felt a cautious optimism. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Not perfectly, not immediately, but a path forward existed. A path where we could coexist, maybe even rebuild some semblance of a relationship. And yet, deep down, I knew that the hardest test was still ahead. The real challenge would be facing the past, confronting all the unspoken hurt, and deciding if forgiveness could truly exist alongside the scars of abandonment. By the third week, the tension had reached a peak. Emma and her mom were navigating a fragile balance between resentment, hope, and the awkward attempt at reconnection. Every small interaction carried a weight of unspoken emotions. One morning, I woke to the sound of my mom in the kitchen, humming softly. It was the first time in weeks I'd heard her do something without intruding or overstepping. Curious, I got up and poured myself a cup of coffee. She looked up and smiled, tentative but genuine. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," I replied, sitting at the counter. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Not the tense, suffocating silence from before, but a quieter one, like a fragile truce. Then she spoke, her voice low. "I know I can't undo the past. I can't take back the years I missed. But I want to try, Emma, even if it's just small steps. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." I took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to recoil, to protect myself, but another part, an unexpected, vulnerable part, wanted to believe her. I don't know if I can fully trust you yet," I said, my voice tight. "But I'm willing to try in small ways. You have to earn it, Mom. Every day in small actions, not just words." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few days, we started building those small steps. Shared breakfasts, quiet evenings with soft music, and even a tentative conversation about the years we lost. She spoke of her struggles, the breakdowns, the guilt that haunted her. I listened, sometimes angry, sometimes empathetic, but always mindful of my boundaries. One night, we sat on the couch, a rare peaceful moment. I realized something crucial. The past would always be part of our story, but the present was ours to shape. "I never thought I'd hear you say that you want me here," she said quietly. "It's complicated," I admitted. "I want to try, but I need to protect myself too. That's not selfish, Mom. That's survival." Tears welled in her eyes. "I understand, and I'll respect that. I'm grateful for this chance. Even if it's just small, it matters to me." Weeks passed. The atmosphere in the apartment began to shift. The anger and resentment still lingered, but slowly, they were replaced with cautious hope. Every shared smile, every respectful conversation, felt like a small victory in a long battle to rebuild what was broken. I realized then that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about acknowledging it, understanding it, and choosing how you let it shape your future. By the end of her treatment, the dynamic between us had changed. She was no longer an uninvited guest, but a tentative companion in the life I had built without her. And though the past could never be erased, the present had grown into something new, something we both could shape. If this story of reconciling trust, boundaries, and family resonated with you, and you want more emotional, high-retention stories like this, stories that keep you hooked till the very end, subscribe to the channel now. Don't miss the next journey where every decision comes with a cost, every emotion is raw, and every story feels like real life. I never thought my life would take a sudden, chaotic turn just because of a single text message. My name's Alex, 32, and I live in Portland. I've always valued my space, my routines, and my quiet life. I work from home as a graphic designer, which is perfect because I'm introverted and don't deal well with constant social interaction. My apartment is my sanctuary, neat, organized, and entirely mine. Then came the message. It was from an old friend, Kara. We hadn't talked much in years, the kind of friendship that fades, but you occasionally see updates online and smile at the memories. Her message was short, desperate, and completely out of the blue. Alex, I'm in trouble. Can I stay with you for a while? Please. I stared at my phone for a long time. My first thought was, no way, absolutely not. But she kept texting, sending reasons, excuses, pleas, and eventually, a heart-wrenching confession about how she'd lost her apartment. Her job was gone, and she had nowhere to turn. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to help, the part of me that remembered all the good times, the late-night conversations, the secrets shared. But another part of me, the one that valued my peace, was screaming, don't do it. I finally responded, I need to think about it. 2 days later, she showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and an apologetic smile. She looked exhausted, disheveled, and desperate. I opened the door, and she practically collapsed inside. Thanks for letting me in, she said, her voice small. I sighed. I didn't let you in. You just appeared. She laughed nervously. Yeah, well, desperate times, desperate measures, right? And that was how my sanctuary became a war zone. The first few days were tolerable. I helped her settle in, made her a few meals, and tried to set some boundaries. But she was clingy, intrusive, and loud. Everything I wasn't used to. She left dishes out, played music without asking, and constantly wanted to talk about her problems. One night, I confronted her. Kara, I can't live like this. You need to respect my space. She pouted. I'm just trying to adjust. I thought you'd be happy to see me. I am happy to see you, but I also need my home to feel like mine, I said firmly. It didn't go over well. She sulked for a few hours, then started leaving passive-aggressive notes around the apartment. Maybe I'll just leave if I'm too much. I felt guilty, but I also felt trapped. The situation was spiraling. I had to figure out how to handle it before it ruined our friendship and my sanity. Then came the surprise. A mutual friend, Jenna, called me one evening. Alex, you've got to hear this, she said urgently. Kara's telling people you kicked her out. She's making it sound like you're a total asshole. I froze. What? No, that's not true. She's upset, Alex. You need to handle this carefully. And that's when I realized the problem wasn't just Kara living in my apartment. The problem was the perception, the morality, the guilt, and the social pressure of deciding whether helping a friend meant sacrificing everything I had built for myself. I spent the next few days trying to navigate conversations, set rules, and maintain some kind of peace. But it was exhausting. Every action I took seemed to make her angrier, yet leaving her on the street felt cruel. And so I found myself at a crossroads. Do I prioritize my home, my peace, and my boundaries, or do I give in to guilt, empathy, and the fear of being seen as an asshole? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The tension in my apartment had reached a point where I could almost feel it in the air. Every sound, every movement seemed magnified. Even the small things Kara did, like humming while washing dishes or tapping her feet during a Zoom call, felt like intrusions. I knew I had to confront the situation, but I dreaded the fallout. One morning, I came home from a coffee run to find Kara sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled, but it was one of those smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Morning, she said softly. Morning, I muttered, putting down my coffee. We both knew the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence charged with frustration, fear, and unspoken accusations. I took a deep breath. "Kara, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She nodded, setting her phone aside. "Okay." I sat across from her at the small kitchen table. "I can't keep living like this. I thought I could help you, but it's affecting me. My work, my sleep, everything. You can't just move in and act like nothing's changed. We need rules, boundaries, respect." She looked hurt. "I thought you'd understand. I'm in a really bad place, Alex. I don't have anyone else." "I get that," I said, leaning forward. "But my home isn't just about you. It's my life. I've worked hard to have a space that's mine. I'm trying to help, but I also need to survive this without losing myself." Kara's eyes filled with tears. "So what? I'm a burden to you?" "No," I said quickly. "You're my friend. Care about you. But this isn't sustainable. We need boundaries, or this will destroy both of us." We spent hours talking that morning. I laid out rules about shared spaces, chores, and personal time. I made it clear that I wasn't rejecting her as a person, but I had to protect my life, my peace. She reluctantly agreed, though the hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. Over the next week, things improved slightly. She respected the boundaries, though there were occasional slip-ups. Forgotten dishes, loud phone calls, minor arguments about noise. I reminded myself to be patient, but every day felt like walking a tightrope. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just finished a client call and was trying to focus on a design project. Kara was watching TV in the living room, volume too high, laughing at a show I didn't find funny. I asked her politely to lower it, and she muttered something under her breath, clearly annoyed. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Kara, I need you to lower the volume. I need to focus." She rolled her eyes. "You're always so controlling. I can't even relax here without feeling judged." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Relax? You think I don't want you to relax? I just need some peace in my home. That's not controlling. It's living with respect." She stood up, pacing the room. "You're selfish, Alex. You don't care about anyone but yourself." I felt my temper rise. "Selfish? I've let you stay here for weeks, even when it's affecting my work and my life. I've tried to be kind, to help, to support you, and you call me selfish." She froze, and for a moment, I thought we'd reached a breakthrough. Maybe she'd realize how unfair she was being. But then she said, softly, almost whispering, "So you're kicking me out?" I shook my head, my chest tight. "I don't want to kick you out. I just need us to respect each other's lives. If that's not possible, we need to figure out a different solution. I'm not the asshole here, Kara. I'm trying to survive without losing myself." Her eyes filled with tears, and she sat back down, silent. The room felt heavy with unspoken words and emotions. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I knew the next few days would determine whether our friendship survived, or whether it would end in resentment and hurt. Then came the knock on my door. It was her. She looked different, vulnerable, fragile, and scared. "Alex," she whispered. I don't want to lose our friendship. I know I've been difficult, but I need help. I'm sorry for everything. Can we start over?" I felt a mix of anger, guilt, and compassion. Could we? Should we? I didn't have the answer yet. But one thing was certain. My boundaries, my life, and my peace had to come first. And that's when I realized the real challenge. Being the friend who cares, while also refusing to be the person who sacrifices everything for someone else's chaos. The morning after her tearful visit, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I knew that today was the day we either fixed things or broke completely. I didn't want to make a rash decision, but I also couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. Kara was already in the kitchen when I came down, making coffee. She didn't look up when I entered. I could feel the tension thick as fog. "Morning," I said cautiously. "Morning," she replied, voice barely above a whisper. I took a seat at the table and watched her pour herself a cup. The silence stretched long enough that I finally broke it. "Kara, we need to set something straight," I began, keeping my voice even. "I care about you. I don't want you to feel abandoned. But living together like this isn't working. It's affecting my mental health, my work, my life. I can't keep going like this." She looked down at her coffee, trembling slightly. "I know. I didn't realize how much space you needed. I thought being here would make things better, not worse." "I understand that," I said. "But understanding isn't enough. We need a plan. You can't just stay here indefinitely. We need boundaries that we both respect, and we need a way for you to get support outside of my apartment. Therapy, a support group, a counselor, something that helps you without draining me." She nodded slowly. I can do that. I'll do anything if it means we can stay friends. I don't want to lose you." Her vulnerability hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to reach across the table to reassure her, to say everything would be fine, but I held back. This wasn't about comforting her. It was about preserving both our lives. We spent the next few hours drafting a plan. She would look for local support programs and part-time housing assistance. I would continue offering guidance, emotional support, and friendship, but within limits. We agreed on quiet hours, shared responsibilities, and personal space. No more assumptions, no more unspoken expectations. Over the following weeks, the tension in the apartment began to ease. Kara started attending a support group and therapy sessions. She respected the boundaries we set. And slowly, our friendship found a new rhythm, one built on understanding, respect, and mutual care rather than guilt and obligation. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, she looked at me and said softly, "I can't thank you enough, Alex, for giving me a second chance, for not turning your back. I don't want to mess it up." I smiled, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "You won't. We both had to learn how to coexist without hurting each other. That's what matters." It wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements, moments of frustration, but they were smaller, easier to navigate. We learned to communicate better, to check in before emotions boiled over. And most importantly, we learned that caring for someone doesn't mean losing yourself in the process. Months later, when she finally moved into her own small apartment, I realized something important. Helping someone isn't always about providing them a place to stay. It's about guiding them to stand on their own while remaining a supportive presence in their life. We waved goodbye as she carried the last box into her new home. There was a sense of closure and relief, but also pride. I had learned that setting boundaries, even with someone you deeply care about, is not only healthy, it's necessary. And for anyone who feels conflicted in situations like mine, remember this. You can care for someone without sacrificing your own peace. Your mental health, your life, and your boundaries matter. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is love someone from a safe distance until they're ready to stand on their own. If you connected with this story, felt the tension, the conflict, the growth, and want more real-life emotional stories that make you think, feel, and reflect, subscribe to the channel now. Join a community that values empathy, understanding, and the complexity of human relationships. Don't miss out on the next story that could change the way you see the world and the people around you. I never expected a birthday to completely change the way I see my family. Honestly, I didn't even want a celebration this year. My 27th birthday fell on a Tuesday, and I had told my parents multiple times that I wanted to keep it quiet. No parties, no surprises, just a low-key dinner with my younger sister, Mia. But apparently that wasn't enough. My name's Sam. I live in Austin, Texas. Growing up, my family was tight, but messy in the way only families with old grudges can be. My dad, Mark, works long hours at a law firm, and my mom, Laura, manages her boutique art gallery. Mia's 22, smart, funny, and usually the glue between all the chaos. I've always been the quieter one, the one who keeps his feelings to himself, which sometimes makes people think I don't care. I just overthink. Anyway, I was working from home on my birthday when I heard the doorbell ring. Strange. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my parents standing there with huge smiles, holding a cake, balloons, and a gift box the size of a small microwave. My first thought, this is exactly what I didn't want. "Happy birthday, Sam!" They cheered in unison. Mia peeked around the corner and grinned, holding a card. I forced a smile. Thanks, guys. I told you I didn't want. But they were already setting up decorations in the living room, dragging out chairs, and humming some off-key tune. It was chaotic and loud. Exactly the kind of energy I wanted to avoid. As I tried to retreat to my home office, my dad grabbed my arm. No hiding today, buddy. Today's about family. You need this. I didn't know whether to laugh or groan. Then came the surprise guest. My aunt from Dallas, who I hadn't seen in 3 years, showed up unannounced. And shortly after, my uncle and cousins appeared, carrying dishes, confetti, and the sort of enthusiasm that makes introverts like me question life choices. I wanted to retreat to my room, but Mia gently tugged me aside. Sam, maybe just go with it for a little? It's kind of sweet. I nodded, feeling guilty. I mean, they clearly spent time preparing this. But the truth is, I wasn't used to family warmth in this form. It felt almost foreign, like I had to remember how to interact. The first part of the party was fine. Laughs, awkward small talk, people teasing me about my single life, and Mom fussing over the cake. But then came the gift opening. I unwrapped a large box from my dad. Inside was a photo album. At first glance, it seemed harmless, filled with childhood pictures, family vacations, and embarrassing snapshots of me in ridiculous costumes. But then I noticed something. Some photos were not from my childhood. They were of recent moments, photos of me at work, coffee shops, even my small apartment. My jaw dropped. How did you get these? I asked, heart pounding. Mom smiled sheepishly. We just wanted to capture your life as it is now. It's thoughtful, right? Thoughtful, right? I flipped through the pages, my discomfort growing. I hadn't shared these moments with anyone. The invasion of my privacy hit hard, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Anger. Before I could react, Mia nudged me. Sam, maybe they meant well, but the warmth I felt from the room before was gone. I excused myself and went to my room, slamming the door behind me. The next hour was filled with passive-aggressive messages from my parents outside my door. Sam, come back. We're just trying to celebrate you. I don't want this, I finally shouted. Mia came in. Sam, I know this is weird, but maybe it's a chance to let them in? They're trying, even if it's messy. I didn't answer. Later that night, I overheard my dad on the phone, voice low and tense. I don't know how to get him to appreciate this. He's always distant. Maybe we pushed too hard. And my mom, sighing in the kitchen, said, I just wanted him to feel loved. Is that too much? I sat in my room, feeling torn. Part of me wanted to forgive them, to accept their chaotic affection. But another part of me felt violated, like my space had been trampled and my boundaries ignored. It was then I realized birthdays weren't just about celebrating another year. They were about confronting the cracks in your relationships. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of a much bigger reckoning. The morning after the chaotic birthday, I woke up with a heavy heart. I didn't sleep well, partly because of the noise, but mostly because my mind wouldn't stop replaying the photo album incident. The invasion of privacy gnawed at me, and I felt trapped in a house that suddenly didn't feel like mine. I went downstairs to grab a coffee, hoping the quiet would help me think. Instead, I found my mom in the kitchen, trying to make pancakes, humming softly as if nothing had happened. Morning, Sam, she said cheerfully. I froze. Morning. She looked at me with concern. You didn't get much sleep last night? Not really. I tried to sip my coffee without making eye contact. Mom sighed and leaned against the counter. Sam, I know yesterday was a lot, and I probably overstepped, maybe even too much. But all I wanted was to show you how much I care. Her words sounded hollow. They were meant to soothe, but instead, they reminded me of the years she wasn't there. 15 years without a word. And now she expected a cake, balloons, and my forgiveness in return? I walked past her, heading to my room, but she called out, Sam, wait, I have something to show you. I paused, unwilling yet curious. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a letter, her handwriting shaky but deliberate. Sam, I know I can't undo the past. I know I hurt you, And I'm sorry every single day. I didn't know how to be your mother, and I ran when I should have stayed. But I've never stopped thinking of you. I just hope you can see that I love you, even now. I felt a lump in my throat. Part of me wanted to crumble, to forgive, to embrace her like a normal son would. But another part of me stiffened. I didn't recognize this woman anymore. Could I trust her words? Or were they just another attempt to manipulate my feelings? I decided to take a walk, needing space. The streets of Austin were unusually quiet that morning. I wandered aimlessly, letting the wind hit my face, trying to sort through my emotions. My phone buzzed. It was Mia. "Hey, wanna grab lunch? Just us." I hesitated, then replied yes. Mia had always been my anchor, the one who understood my moods without me saying much. Over lunch, she was frank. "Sam, I know yesterday was rough, but maybe this is an opportunity. Mom is trying, even if it's clumsy. Dad too. You can choose to let them in or not, but you need to make a decision soon. Things will only get messier the longer you avoid it." Her words sank in, but didn't comfort me. Messier? Oh, I had no idea. Later that evening, my dad asked to speak with me alone. We sat in the living room, the dim light casting long shadows. "Sam, I know yesterday didn't go the way you wanted, and I get it, but I think you need to know something." He paused, took a deep breath. "Mom didn't just leave because she wanted to. She had a lot going on. Mental health issues, depression. She was overwhelmed, scared. I tried to reach her, but she shut everyone out, including you." I felt anger and sympathy swirl together. Mental illness didn't excuse leaving me, but it explained a lot. "I get that," I said quietly, "but she abandoned me. She missed every important moment. How do I reconcile that?" Dad nodded. "You don't have to forgive immediately, but knowing why may help you understand her actions. And maybe, just maybe, there's a way to rebuild slowly." Rebuild. The word felt foreign. I didn't know if I was ready to rebuild anything with someone who had hurt me so deeply. The next few days were tense. Mom hovered, trying to help with small tasks around the house, offering gestures of goodwill. Flowers, small gifts, even notes on my desk. Each one felt like both an olive branch and a reminder of the gap she had left. One night, she knocked softly on my door. "Sam, can we talk?"
I gesturet for her tog sit.
She began to speak, voice trembling, sharing memories I hadn't heard before. Her own childhood struggles, mistakes she made, and regrets that kept her awake at night. By the end of her monologue, tears streamed down her face. "I can't ask you to forgive me. I wanted you to know the truth." I sat in silence, absorbing every word. Part of me softened, part of me remained wary. I knew the coming days would determine whether our family could heal or fracture permanently. And then came the moment that changed everything. A revelation from Mia that shook me to my core. "I found some old letters," she said one evening. "Letters from Mom that she never sent. She tried reaching out when you were 12 and 13. She even wrote about coming back. But Dad intercepted them. He didn't want to upset you while she sorted her issues." I felt my stomach drop. Everything I had blamed her for might not have been entirely her fault. Dad's secrecy, meant to protect me, had shaped my perception of abandonment. I didn't know what to feel. Anger at Dad, sympathy for Mom, confusion about myself. The week ended with a quiet dinner, all three of us sitting together. Mom reached across the table, gently placing her hand on mine. "I know trust isn't rebuilt overnight," she said softly, "but I'll spend the rest of my life trying if you let me." I stared at her hand, my heart hammering. Could I allow her back in? Could I forgive while protecting myself? Or was I destined to remain distant, forever haunted by years of absence? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The tension between wanting to heal and needing to guard my heart was unbearable. I realized that the next chapter of my life would hinge on the choices I made in the coming days. And deep down, I knew the storm wasn't over. Not yet. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The tension between wanting to heal and needing to guard my heart was unbearable. I realized that the next chapter of my life would hinge on the choices I made in the coming days. And deep down, I knew the storm wasn't over. Not yet. The morning sunlight spilled across my room, but I barely noticed. I was still tangled in thoughts about Mom, Dad, Mia, and everything that had unfolded over the last week. Each memory, each revelation, felt like a puzzle piece I didn't know how to place. I got up, showered, and made my way downstairs. The house felt different now, less like a battlefield, more like a fragile truce waiting to be tested. Mom was in the kitchen, humming softly again. But this time, the melody didn't feel invasive. It felt tentative, like she was stepping into the world of my forgiveness, carefully measuring each move. "Morning, Sam," she said quietly. "Morning," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She handed me a mug of coffee, her hands slightly trembling. "I thought you could use this." I nodded, accepting it. The simple gesture carried more weight than I could put into words. It was an olive branch, unspoken yet heavy with meaning. After breakfast, Dad asked to speak with both of us. We sat together in the living room. The air was thick with unspoken words, the kind that had been buried for years. "Sam, Linda, we need to talk about everything. The past, the misunderstandings, and how we move forward," Dad began. Mom's eyes welled up. "I know I caused so much pain. I can't change what I did, but I want to try to make amends." I felt a lump in my throat. This wasn't just about apologies. It was about acknowledging wounds that had festered silently for over a decade. Dad continued, "I didn't handle things well either. I thought I was protecting Sam, but I realize now I might have made things worse by keeping letters and messages from you. Linda, I'm sorry for that." Mom's hand reached for mine again. I hesitated, then allowed her to hold it. That small act of connection sent a shiver down my spine. The hours passed as we talked, sometimes calmly, sometimes with raised voices. Mom shared stories of her struggles with depression, her feelings of helplessness, and her own regrets. Dad confessed the guilt he carried for trying to shield me and inadvertently causing more pain. I spoke about my anger, my loneliness, and the nights I spent wishing she hadn't left. It was messy, emotional, painful, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt the threads of connection slowly reweaving themselves. By the afternoon, we decided to go through the old photo albums. Mom had brought them down from the attic. As we flipped through the pages, laughter mingled with tears. Photos of me as a toddler, my first day of school, birthday parties she had missed. It all hit me at once. "I missed so much," she whispered, voice breaking. "You did," I said softly. "But you're here now." That evening, Mia came over. She watched quietly as we sat together on the living room floor, surrounded by memories and shared emotions. She smiled gently. "I think this is the start of something new for all of you." Over the next few days, Mom stayed with me, not just physically but emotionally. She didn't overstep. She listened when I needed to vent, offered help when I asked, and gradually, the tension in the house began to ease. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mom spoke again. "Sam, I don't expect everything to be perfect. I just want a chance, a real chance, to be part of your life. No pressure, no guilt, just us slowly." I looked at her, the woman who had been a stranger and a mother all at once. I felt a shift inside me, a willingness to let go of some of the pain without erasing it entirely. "I can try," I admitted, "but I need boundaries and patience. You have to earn my trust, Mom. Not just words, but actions." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand, and I will. Every day I'll try." Weeks passed. The house felt alive again, but this time with understanding, communication, and cautious optimism. I still had my private space, my routines, and my own life, but Mom's presence became less intrusive and more supportive. Then came the day I realized something profound. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean everything would be perfect. It meant choosing to see someone as they were now, not just as they had been. Mom had truly changed, or maybe she had always wanted to, and life hadn't allowed her to. Either way, I chose to accept it. That night, As I tucked in for bed, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I glanced at the living room, where Mom was quietly reading, and I smiled. This was far from the end of our journey, but it was the beginning of something real, something human. And to you, the listener who has been with me through this story, life is messy, painful, and complicated. Family can hurt, misunderstand, and even leave us, but it can also heal in ways we never expect. If you felt the emotions of this story, if it resonated with your own life, then I invite you to join us. Subscribe to the channel, be part of our journey, and witness real stories that explore the depths of family, love, and forgiveness. Every story is a chance to reflect, connect, and grow, and I'd love for you to be here for the next one. I never thought I'd be in this situation. Honestly, if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be questioning my relationship with my sister, I'd have laughed. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and this one hit harder than anything I could have imagined. My name is Ethan, I'm 32, and I live in a small apartment in Chicago. I work in marketing, not exactly thrilling, but it pays the bills and allows me to maintain a lifestyle I'm comfortable with. My sister, Claire, is 28, a school teacher, and always been the perfect sibling. Organized, responsible, and adored by everyone. People say opposites attract, but in our case, it always caused friction. It all started 6 months ago when our parents passed away in a car accident. One moment they were alive, laughing about some trivial argument over dinner, and the next they were gone. Claire and I were blindsided, devastated, and completely unprepared. The grief was suffocating, but it also revealed old wounds we'd buried under years of normal sibling rivalry. A week after the funeral, Claire called me to talk about their will. Apparently, they left the house to be sold. The proceeds split equally. Fine, that's fair. But then she dropped the bomb. She wanted to move in with me until we sold her half of the proceeds. I froze. My apartment was small, 1 bedroom, barely enough space for me. Claire, I don't know if that's possible, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She insisted. Ethan, I can't stay at my friend's. I'm still grieving. I need my brother. I wanted to help. I really did. But something inside me screamed, I can't do this. She's always been demanding, and I know living together would only escalate old tensions. I tried to reason with her, offering to help her find a short-term rental or a hotel, but she kept pushing. The first night she stayed, my patience frayed. She rearranged my kitchen, moved my furniture around, and criticized my cooking. I snapped. Claire, this is my space. You can't just come in and change everything. She looked hurt, tears in her eyes. Ethan, I thought we could be close again, like before. I shook my head, angry and frustrated. This isn't before. This is now. And now I need boundaries. For days, the tension lingered. Every word, every glance seemed to carry years of resentment and misunderstandings. Claire accused me of being selfish. I accused her of being controlling. Friends who visited commented on the palpable tension, but I couldn't explain it. How do you explain decades of unspoken rivalry and now grief piling on top of it? Then came the incident that pushed me to my breaking point. Claire invited her friends over while I was at work. When I came home, the apartment was trashed. Empty pizza boxes, beer bottles, and a few broken things. My favorite mug was missing. I was furious. Claire, what the hell is this? I shouted, my hands trembling. She shrugged, unapologetic. Relax, Ethan. It's just one night. They were having fun. Fun? This is my home. My things. I yelled. She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. It's just stuff. The argument escalated. Voices raised. Neighbors probably wondering what was happening. I stormed out, walking around the block to calm down. I couldn't believe this. My sister, the one person I thought I could rely on, was making me feel like a stranger in my own apartment. I spent the night on the couch, thinking about everything. Our childhood, our fights, the constant comparisons, the favoritism. I couldn't untangle it all. I realized that the issue wasn't just the apartment. It was Claire. It was me. It was the unresolved tension we'd never faced. The next day, I told her we needed serious boundaries. You can't just move in and act like this is normal. I love you, Claire, but this isn't working. Either we set rules, or you need to find somewhere else. She glared, a mix of anger and hurt. Ethan, you're being cruel. You think I want to cause problems? I need family right now. I sighed, defeated. I wanted to be there for her, but I also wanted peace, respect, and my own space. The house wasn't just a building. It was my sanctuary, the only place I could process my grief in private. As the days passed, things got worse. Claire would criticize every little thing, from the way I did laundry to the way I organized my closet. I started avoiding her, locking myself in my room, pretending to work late at the office. But she followed, trying to engage, insisting we have heart-to-heart talks. Finally, I snapped. Claire, enough. This isn't healthy for either of us. You can't just move in and expect everything to go back to normal. I'm not a hotel. I'm your brother. She cried, ran to her room, and slammed the door. I felt a pang of guilt, but I also knew I couldn't back down. I reached out to my closest friend, Mark, who had always been like an older brother to me. Mark, what do I do? She's my sister, and I love her, but I can't take this anymore. Mark listened, then said something that stuck with me. Ethan, love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. You can love her from a distance if that's what keeps your sanity. That night, I sat alone, staring at the ceiling. The apartment felt empty, silent, but not peaceful. I realized that sometimes love meant making hard choices, even if it hurt the people you cared about most. And now I'm here, asking myself, and maybe you, the listener, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister take over my space, even when she's grieving and needs me? Or is setting boundaries the only way to protect my own sanity while still loving her from a distance? After that night, tension filled the apartment like a thick fog. Claire tried to act normal, but I could feel the silent judgment in everything she did. How she cleaned, how she organized, even how she used my things. I started locking certain cabinets, keeping my personal space protected, but it felt like a losing battle. One evening, I came home from work to find her sitting on the couch with a pile of papers. I've been looking into the house sale, she said, her tone calm but sharp. We could sell it in 3 months if we list it fast. Or we could hold off for a year and get more money. I sighed. Claire, we don't have to rush, but we need to consider what's best for both of us. Her eyes flashed. You mean what's best for you? You've always been selfish, Ethan. You always have to have your way. Couldn't believe it. All these years, I thought we were close enough to understand each other. Now, I felt like I was living with a stranger who knew exactly how to push my buttons. Days turned into weeks. Every interaction became a battle. She criticized my friends, my habits, even my taste in movies. One night, she went through my closet and commented on my clothes, saying I should dress more like a responsible adult. I exploded. Claire, enough. This isn't your home. You don't get to control everything I do. Tears welled in her eyes again. You think I want to do this? I miss them too, Ethan. I miss Mom and Dad. And I thought being here with you would make it easier. But you can't even handle that. That hit me harder than her insults. I had been so focused on defending my space that I forgot we were both grieving. But her constant criticism was suffocating, and I started considering asking her to leave. Things came to a head one weekend when I invited a few friends over. Claire had made a huge mess in the living room, leaving papers and half-eaten snacks everywhere. I lost it. I can't do this anymore. You need to leave. She stared at me, stunned. You're kicking me out? After everything. I realized then that this wasn't just about space. It was about grief, anger, and unspoken resentment. We both needed time to heal, but living together was only amplifying the tension. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about all the years we spent apart, the unresolved fights, the competition for attention. And now, here we were, forced together in the aftermath of our parents' death, and neither of us knew how to handle it. I knew a conversation was coming, one that would either bridge the gap or shatter our relationship completely. The next morning, I sat Claire down at the small kitchen table. The tension was unbearable, but I knew we had to talk before things got worse. Claire, I started, my voice trembling slightly. This living together, it's not working. We're both on edge, and it's tearing us apart. She looked down at her hands, silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. I know. I thought being with you would help me grieve, but I see now that I was wrong. I thought being close to you would make me feel closer to Mom and Dad, but all it's done is make me angry and frustrated. I nodded. I miss them too, but being angry at each other isn't helping. We need space to process our grief separately, not together. Tears ran down her cheeks, and I realized how much pain we both carried, unspoken for years. I don't want to lose you, Ethan, she whispered. I don't want to lose you either, I admitted. But right now, we need boundaries. I can help you find a place to stay temporarily, and we can stay in touch daily. We'll figure this out, but we can't keep living like this. She nodded, finally understanding. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about preserving our relationship. Slowly, we started making plans for her to move into a small apartment nearby. The anger didn't disappear overnight, but at least it was being replaced with understanding. Over the next few weeks, the distance helped. We called each other, shared memories, laughed about old times, and even cried together over our parents. Living apart gave us perspective, and slowly the resentment faded. By the time Claire moved into her new place, I realized something important. Family isn't just about proximity. It's about respect, boundaries, and communication. And sometimes the hardest decisions, like asking someone to leave, are actually acts of love. We still have rough days, but the bond we share is stronger than ever. We learned that being siblings isn't just about shared blood. It's about shared growth, respect, and the courage to face difficult truths together. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or a choice you had to make, then you'll want to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel for more emotional, gripping stories, real-life dilemmas, family drama, and heartfelt journeys you won't want to miss. Every story is designed to pull you in and keep you hooked till the very end. The first time I stepped into my childhood home after 10 years, I wasn't sure what I expected. Nostalgia? Regret? Maybe a combination of both. All I knew was that the old creak of the wooden stairs and the faint smell of my mom's lavender perfume hit me harder than I imagined. I had left home at 18, running from arguments, tension, and secrets that seemed to weigh the walls down. Dad had been distant, always working long hours, and Mom had her ways of holding her pain behind smiles. Now, after my parents' sudden passing in a car accident, I was tasked with sorting through decades of memories. I didn't expect to find anything else hidden among the dust and faded photographs. But the first box I opened changed everything. It was a stack of letters tied with a worn ribbon, addressed to my older brother, Ryan. I hadn't seen him since I left, and the letters were from a woman I didn't recognize. Their tone was intimate, loving, and full of plans I never knew existed for our family. Confusion turned into a mix of anger and curiosity. I had always felt invisible in my own family, overshadowed by Ryan, who excelled in everything I failed at: school, sports, even Mom's affection. And now, these letters hinted at secrets that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about my family. I took a deep breath and called Ryan. His voice on the other end was cautious, almost hesitant. "I heard you're back," he said. "Did you start digging already?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "There are things Mom and Dad never told you, things I was supposed to tell you, but I didn't know how. Something told me that our reunion wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't just about grief anymore. It was about unraveling truths that might tear the last threads of our family apart." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the empty house, listening to the echoes of my past. I remembered the fights, the laughter, the silent dinners, and the whispered arguments behind closed doors. Each memory felt like a puzzle piece I had avoided my whole life, and now they were all on the floor, waiting for me to put them together. I didn't know if I was ready to face Ryan or the secrets of our parents. But one thing was clear: this journey would change everything. The morning after I called Ryan, I found him waiting in the driveway. He hadn't changed much. Still tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying that same silent confidence I remembered. But there was a tension in his eyes that made my stomach twist. "Glad you came," he said, not smiling. "We have a lot to talk about." I nodded, trying to mask the nerves I felt. "Yeah."
I guess vedo.
We sat in the living room, the same room where we had spent countless hours as kids. The walls seemed smaller now, the furniture heavier with memories. Ryan cleared his throat and handed me a thick envelope. "These were Dad's journals," he said quietly. "Mom's too. You need to read them. There are things you never knew. About them. About us. About what they kept from you." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to push it away, ignore the past, and just move on. But another part, curiosity, anger, maybe even longing, made my hands shake as I took the envelope. The first journal was Dad's. His handwriting was careful, deliberate, and surprisingly tender. Page after page revealed a man struggling to balance work, family, and his own regrets. I read about arguments with Mom I never witnessed, decisions made behind closed doors, and moments where he wished he had been a better father. But the real shock came when I found references to a second family. Not another wife, not another child, but plans he had made to protect us from a dangerous situation we never knew existed. Letters explaining why certain relatives were never allowed near us, why Mom always insisted on moving houses every few years, and why Ryan had been included in plans I was deliberately kept out of. Ryan watched me silently as I read. "I was supposed to tell you after Mom and Dad passed," he said. "But I didn't know how. I was scared you'd hate them or me. I don't even know what to feel," I whispered. "All my life, I thought I was just overlooked, invisible. And now you know it wasn't neglect," he said softly. "It was protection. They loved us, even if they didn't show it the way we wanted." Then came Mom's journal. Her handwriting was elegant, flowing, and full of emotion. I learned about her struggles, her fears, and her unspoken dreams. She had battled anxiety and depression, hiding it behind laughter and warmth. She had written about me, about how she worried I would resent her absence and how proud she was of the person I was becoming despite everything. By the time I finished both journals, I was emotionally spent. The house no longer felt like a place of memories. It felt like a repository of truths too heavy to bear alone. I looked at Ryan, and for the first time in years, I saw him not as my brother who had it all, but as someone equally lost, equally burdened by the weight of our family. "We have to sort this out," I said finally. "Not just the house, not just the stuff, but us, our relationship. We can't let their secrets destroy what we still have." Ryan nodded. "I agree. We'll do it together, one step at a time." We spent the next few days going through the house, room by room, memory by memory. Every photograph, every trinket, every old note brought up emotions we had both buried. Arguments flared, tears fell, but slowly, understanding grew. By the end of the week, I realized that the house wasn't just filled with secrets. It was filled with the echoes of love, mistakes, and sacrifices. And maybe, just maybe, those echoes could guide us toward healing. But even as we started to rebuild, one question lingered. Could we ever fully reconcile the past without it reshaping the future we were trying to build? The following weeks felt like walking through a storm, with moments of calm that seemed almost surreal. Ryan and I had begun to open up in ways we never had as kids. We shared stories of our childhoods, our hidden fears, and even our petty resentments. Every conversation was a careful dance, balancing anger with understanding, hurt with forgiveness. One afternoon, I stumbled upon a box of old home videos. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first tape showed Mom and Dad hosting a family barbecue years before I left. I was a little kid, running around with Ryan, laughing so hard my stomach hurt. There were no shadows, no secrets, just us, free and happy. As the footage played, tears streamed down my face. Ryan sat beside me, silent, his hand resting on my shoulder. For a moment, all the years of distance, anger, and confusion melted away. I realized that despite all the pain and secrets, we had shared moments of joy that no one could ever erase. Over the next few days, we dug even deeper into the journals and letters. We discovered truths that were bittersweet. Unspoken sacrifices, miscommunications, and parents who did their best in ways that sometimes hurt us. But we also found hints of humor, cleverness, and a persistent, unshakable love that had somehow survived the years of silence. Ryan and I decided to make a plan. We would document everything, not just the journals and letters, but our own memories, reflections, and conversations. We wanted to honor Mom and Dad, even as we acknowledged their imperfections. One night, after hours of sorting and organizing, we sat together in the living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows on the walls. I turned to Ryan, feeling a mix of relief and vulnerability. I think I understand them now. Not completely, but enough to forgive. Ryan nodded slowly. Me too. And I think I understand us too. We're not just their kids. We're brothers, and we've got a chance to start over. It wasn't easy. Forgiveness rarely is. But as we continued to uncover the layers of our family's story, we found that each secret, each hidden truth, was also an opportunity for connection. By the time we finished, the house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt alive with memory, with love, and with the potential for new beginnings. We laughed more, argued less, and for the first time in years, felt like a real family again. The last evening before I left the house to return to my own life, Ryan and I stood on the porch, looking out at the yard where we had spent so many childhood summers. "You think Mom and Dad would be proud?" I asked quietly. Ryan smiled, a soft, genuine smile. "I think they'd be relieved, and maybe, just maybe, happy to see us finally figuring it out on our own." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past finally lift, replaced by hope. We hugged, holding on to the moment longer than either of us realized. For the first time in decades, the threads of our family felt strong enough to hold us. And as I walked away, I whispered to myself, it's okay to carry the past with you, as long as you don't let it define your future. If the story moved you, made you feel the weight of family, love, and forgiveness, then you'll understand why these stories matter. Leave a comment on how it touched you, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt journeys where every emotion counts. The day I got the call, I was sitting in my apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee and scrolling through emails, when my phone vibrated. The display showed my sister, Rachel, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Emily, it's Dad," she said, her voice shaking. He's asking for you." My stomach dropped. Dad and I hadn't spoken in almost 10 years, not really. Not since the divorce, not since Mom left him, not since everything fell apart. And now, after a decade of silence, he wanted me? Why? I drove to the old family house, the one I hadn't been inside since I was 18. The neighborhood had changed, grown older, but the house looked the same. Worn siding, overgrown bushes, and that crooked mailbox Dad had refused to fix. When I stepped inside, the air hit me like a wave of memory. The scent of old wood and lavender lingered, mixing with the faint aroma of dust and lost time. Dad sat at the kitchen table, hunched over a mug of coffee, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly, his eyes avoiding mine. "I didn't know if I should," I admitted, folding my arms. "It's been a long time, Dad." "I know," he said, his voice thick. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need your help. Mom, she's gone, Emily, and I don't know how to fix the mess she left behind." The words hit me like a punch. Mom had passed 2 weeks ago, suddenly, without warning. I'd mourned her from afar, quietly, but hearing my father's voice crack made it real. "What kind of mess?" I asked, my voice more steady than I felt. "Everything. Her debts, her friends, the charities she promised to support, and her house. She left me the keys, but I can't do it alone." I stared at him. For a moment, I wanted to turn around and walk away. I wanted to leave the past in the past. But looking at him, the man who had once been my world, now fragile and human, I felt something shift. Responsibility, guilt, maybe both. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll help, but I'm not making promises about anything else." He nodded, relief flooding his face. That's all I need. Just help me sort it out. The first day inside Mom's house was a minefield of memories. Every corner told a story. The living room with the couch where we argued about school. The kitchen where Dad used to try and teach me to cook. The backyard where I'd spent countless summer nights pretending nothing could hurt me. As we went through drawers, closets, and cabinets, Dad revealed things I'd never known. Mom had been secretly funding a scholarship for local kids, had kept journals filled with poetry and regrets, and had hidden letters from people she loved but had hurt. Each discovery was bittersweet, a reminder of the woman she had been and the wounds she had left behind. That night, we sat on the porch with the lights dimmed, a cool breeze brushing past us. Neither of us spoke much, just watched the stars and listened to the hum of the quiet neighborhood. Finally, Dad broke the silence. I know I wasn't the best father, he admitted. I made mistakes, but I always tried. And now, I just want to make things right. With you, with your sister, with Mom in some way. I looked at him, seeing both the strength and vulnerability I'd missed. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, our fractured family could start to heal. Little did I know, the next days would bring more than cleaning and sorting. Secrets would surface, some small, some life-changing, and we'd be forced to confront truths about Mom, Dad, and ourselves that would challenge everything we thought we knew about family. The next morning, I returned to Mom's house, armed with boxes, trash bags, and a determination I didn't quite understand. Dad had already started sorting through the paperwork she left behind, muttering to himself as he tried to make sense of accounts, bills, and letters. You know, he said without looking up, I never realized how much she kept from all of us. I nodded. Yeah, it's like she had this whole other life. Some of it's good, some of it's confusing. We moved from room to room, uncovering her life layer by layer. In the study, I found a hidden drawer in her desk containing dozens of letters. Some were addressed to me, written during my teenage years, but never sent. I opened one at random. Dear Emily, I think about you every day. I know I failed, and I'm sorry. I hope one day you can forgive me. I love you. My hands shook as I read the words. She had written these letters, pouring out regret and love, yet they never reached me. Why? I couldn't understand her choices, but reading them stirred something in me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Dad noticed my silence. Those are hers, he said softly. She wanted to say those things. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't know how. We spent the day sorting through more letters, journals, and mementos. Each item revealed a different facet of Mom. Her fears, her dreams, her mistakes. I found entries about her struggles with mental health, her guilt over leaving Dad, and her deep love for both me and Rachel. By late afternoon, exhaustion set in, but I couldn't stop. I needed to understand her, to piece together the puzzle of who she was and why she did what she did. Dad seemed equally absorbed, though at times he would pause and stare at a photograph, lost in memory. Emily, he said suddenly, voice tight, there's something I haven't told you about your sister. I froze. What do you mean? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Before Mom left, she made some choices that affected Rachel's life. Things I never told you because I didn't want to hurt you. But now you deserve to know. He explained that Rachel had been struggling financially and emotionally, and Mom had tried to help behind the scenes. There were letters, small cash gifts, and even college tuition payments arranged secretly. Mom had tried to make amends in ways I hadn't known about. I felt a mix of anger, guilt, and relief. Mom's actions were complicated, sometimes reckless, sometimes loving. But understanding them made me see her as a real person, flawed yet human. That evening, Rachel arrived. She looked older, more tired, but her eyes held the same spark of determination I remembered. We hugged, a long, awkward embrace, filled with unspoken apologies and shared grief. I can't believe how much she left behind, Rachel said, tears welling in her eyes. I never knew she was doing all this for us. I didn't either, I admitted. It's a lot to process. Over the next few days, the three of us worked together to sort everything. We laughed, argued, and cried. Each item sparked memories. Each discovery brought new understanding. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the first real connection we'd had as a family in years. One afternoon, while going through Mom's journal, I found a passage that made me pause. I hope they can forgive me one day. I hope they see me not as the woman who left, but as someone who tried to do better, even if it was too late. I read it aloud to Dad and Rachel. Silence followed, heavy but meaningful. We had all been carrying our own versions of her story, but now, hearing her words directly, it felt like a bridge had formed. By the end of the week, the house was organized, but more importantly, we had begun to untangle the web of secrets, guilt, and misunderstandings. Conversations that had once been impossible were now happening. Trust was tentative, but it existed. I realized something vital. Family isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes painfully flawed. But it's also resilient, capable of growth, forgiveness, and even joy after years of silence. As I prepared to leave for the night, Dad grabbed my hand. "Thank you, Emily, for helping me, for helping all of us. I know this isn't easy." I smiled faintly, squeezing his hand. "It's worth it. We're worth it." We hadn't solved everything. There were still questions, unresolved feelings, and the shadow of Mom's absence. But for the first time, I felt hope. Hope that we could carry her memory forward with love instead of resentment. And as I locked the door behind me, I made a silent promise. No more running from the past. No more letting silence define us. We would face it together and maybe, just maybe, create a family stronger than the one we inherited. The following morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Today, Rachel and I were going to visit Mom's old apartment one last time. Dad had insisted we take care of her things properly, making sure nothing meaningful was thrown away. But this visit wasn't just about sorting things. It felt like a pilgrimage, a chance to understand the woman who had shaped our lives in ways both visible and invisible. As we approached the building, memories flooded me. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and dust, the same smell I remembered as a kid. I paused at the door, running my fingers along the chipped paint, feeling the weight of years that had passed since Mom had last lived here. Rachel squeezed my hand. "We're doing the right thing," she said softly. Inside, it was empty except for the lingering echo of her life. Old furniture had been removed, and the walls bore faint marks where pictures had hung. We moved carefully, examining remnants of her past, drawers, cupboards, and shelves that still held traces of who she had been. In the bedroom, I found a small box tucked under the bed. Curious, I opened it. Inside were photographs. Mom smiling at birthdays, Rachel and I as children, vacations, moments of happiness I had long buried in memory. I held up a picture of Mom and me at a park, our arms around each other, both of us grinning. I hadn't realized how much I missed her smile until that instant. Rachel picked up another photo, this one of Mom holding her graduation cap, tears in her eyes. "She loved us," Rachel whispered. "She always did, in her own way." It was a revelation. For years, I had focused on her absence, the pain she caused, and the questions she left unanswered. But these photos, these tangible pieces of memory, reminded me that love, even flawed and complicated, had always existed between us. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the journey we had taken. Life was messy, unpredictable, and often unfair, but it was also beautiful, filled with moments that could bind us together even after years of separation. And I knew one thing for certain. Love, even when complicated, was always worth holding on to. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of the complexity of family, the pain of absence, and the power of forgiveness, then you're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how this story made you feel. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional journeys that show us the strength and resilience of the human heart. I never thought a single phone call could turn my world upside down, but that's exactly what happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. My name's Emily, I'm 28, and I live in Seattle. 4 years, my family's life had been like a calm river. Steady, predictable, maybe a little dull, but comfortable. That was until my older brother, Ryan, whom I hadn't spoken to in over 5 years, called me out of the blue. The first time we ever had a real argument, I was 17. It was over something stupid, a borrowed jacket, a misplaced promise, but it exploded into a full-blown fight. We said things we didn't mean, and from that day forward, the silence stretched longer than either of us imagined. Our parents tried to mediate, but we were stubborn, and we didn't trust each other anymore. Ryan's voice on the phone was different now. Older, quieter, almost broken. I need your help, he said. The words hung in the air as I tried to process them. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. Mom's sick. She doesn't have anyone, and I don't know what to do. I was hoping, maybe you could help. My chest tightened. Mom had been living alone in Portland for years, her health gradually declining after Dad passed away. She had always been strong, fiercely independent, but time and age hadn't been kind. I hadn't spoken to Ryan since that huge fight, and now he was asking me to help him. And Mom, like nothing had happened. I sat on the couch, gripping my coffee cup, trying to decide if I could put the past aside. Part of me wanted to refuse outright. Part of me remembered how Mom used to read bedtime stories to us, how she'd always tucked us in and made everything feel safe. Finally, I agreed. Okay, I'll help, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. When I arrived at Mom's apartment, Ryan was already there, pacing nervously. He looked older, thinner, and a little worn down, just like Mom had always warned me he'd become if he didn't slow down. Mom sat in her recliner, frail but smiling when she saw me. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. It's been a long time, she said softly. We spent the next few hours catching up, filling in the gaps of the past 5 years. Ryan apologized for everything. His anger, his absence, the way he let our feud grow. Mom apologized too, for not calling me, for letting things fester. The room was heavy with emotion, with the kind of quiet that comes from realizing how fragile life can be. By evening, it was clear that Mom couldn't live alone anymore. Her illness made even small tasks exhausting, and the thought of leaving her alone was unbearable. We discussed moving her in with me, but the logistics were complicated. My apartment was small, my work schedule hectic, and Ryan's job was in another state. That night, I lay awake thinking about the decision ahead. Bringing Mom into my home meant opening my life to years of unresolved tension, to old arguments, to the pain of what had been lost. But it also meant healing, connection, and the chance to rebuild a family that had been broken for far too long. The next morning, I made the call. Mom, we'll figure this out. You can stay with me for now, I said, my heart pounding. Little did I know, that decision would spark a series of events. Unexpected, emotional, and sometimes heart-wrenching. That would challenge everything I thought I knew about family, forgiveness, and myself. Over the next week, Ryan and I worked together to move Mom's things, settling her into my apartment. The air was thick with tension, with old grievances bubbling up at the slightest provocation. But amidst the arguments and awkward silences, small moments of tenderness emerged. Mom humming in the kitchen, Ryan and I laughing at a memory from childhood, a shared cup of tea in the living room. As we navigated this new life, I realized that family wasn't just about blood or proximity. It was about choice, about showing up even when it's hard, about learning to forgive not just others but ourselves. By the end of the first month, the apartment had transformed. Photos from Mom's past lined the walls. Ryan had started helping more around the house, and I had begun to let go of my own resentment, slowly but surely. And yet, the real challenge was just beginning, because as Mom's illness progressed, we would face decisions that no family should ever have to make, and each choice would test our bonds, our patience, and our love for one another. The days that followed were filled with laughter, tears, arguments, and quiet moments of reflection. Mom's health fluctuated, sometimes better, sometimes worse. Ryan and I struggled to communicate without falling back into old patterns. But each small victory, each moment of connection, reminded me why I had agreed to help in the first place. And in the back of my mind, I knew that this was more than just helping Mom. It was about reclaiming the family we had lost, piece by piece, heart by heart. The days following Mom's move into my apartment were both chaotic and strangely comforting. It felt like having a storm in the living room that occasionally turned into a warm summer breeze. I was trying to balance work, household responsibilities, and my own life while Mom and Ryan adjusted to this new reality. The air was thick with unspoken words and memories that neither of us knew how to address. Ryan, surprisingly, had become more helpful than I expected. He cooked, cleaned, and even took Mom to her doctor appointments. Yet, there were moments when I saw flashes of the old resentment in his eyes, a flicker of anger at the life we'd lived apart. It was a reminder that while time had passed, some wounds didn't heal on their own. One evening, Mom asked me to sit with her in the living room. She held an old photo album in her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. "I want you to see the family we were," she said softly. We spent hours going through the pictures. Ryan as a toddler, me with scraped knees, family vacations that seemed like they belonged to someone else. Each photo was a time capsule, a reminder of love and joy that had existed before life had become complicated. "I missed so much," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I only hurt you." Her words struck me harder than I expected. I had carried resentment for years, but hearing her admit it, even now, opened a door I didn't realize was still there. I reached out and held her hand. "We're here now," I said. "We can try to move forward." But moving forward was easier said than done. Ryan and I had to navigate our strained sibling relationship while caring for Mom. There were arguments, of course. Small things, who would make dinner, who would help Mom with her medications, would escalate into shouting matches. One night, after a particularly heated argument about Mom's treatment schedule, I stormed into my bedroom, my hands shaking. Ryan followed a few minutes later, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet. "I didn't mean to snap.
I'm scared. Okay.
Scared of losing her, scared of losing us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the brother I had fought with years ago, but the scared man he had become. "I'm scared too," I admitted, "but yelling won't help anyone. We have to do this together." That night we stayed up late, talking, not just about Mom, but about our lives, our regrets, and the family we wanted to rebuild. It was the first time in years that Ryan and I felt like siblings again, not adversaries. The days turned into weeks. Mom's health had its ups and downs. Some mornings, she was energetic, laughing over breakfast. Other days, she could barely get out of bed. We adapted. I learned how to manage medications, doctor visits, and the small but important details that kept her comfortable. Ryan became more patient, more understanding, and even started sharing stories from his past that I had never known. One evening, as we were sitting in the living room, Mom turned to us with a soft smile. "I know this hasn't been easy," she said, "but seeing you two together again, it's more than I could have hoped for." I felt a lump in my throat. "We're learning," I said, "one day at a time." It wasn't perfect. There were still tense moments, tears, and moments of doubt. But there was also laughter, shared memories, and a slow rebuilding of trust. Ryan and I found ourselves reminiscing about childhood games, inside jokes, and even the silly fights that had once seemed so important. One day, Ryan brought home a small, old board game from the attic, Monopoly, worn and faded. We played together, laughing at the memories it brought back. Mom watched us, smiling, her eyes shining with pride. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental, a symbol of the bond we were beginning to restore. As weeks turned into months, the apartment felt more like home. Mom's health stabilized somewhat, and she began helping around the house in small ways, like organizing her medications or cooking simple meals. Ryan and I grew closer, learning to communicate without letting old resentment interfere. And through it all, I realized something important. Family isn't just about living under the same roof. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. It's about forgiveness, patience, and love that survives the hard moments. Of course, there were still challenges. Mom had medical emergencies, Ryan had work stress, and I had my own life to balance. But every time we faced a difficult day, we reminded each other why we were here. For Mom, for us, and for the family we were slowly rebuilding. By the end of this part, I understood that healing wasn't a single moment but a series of small steps. And as I watched Mom and Ryan laughing over a silly game one evening, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. A sense that maybe, just maybe, we were on the right path. The months following Mom's move had been a roller coaster. Moments of joy mingled with tension, and every day felt like a small victory or a setback depending on her health, Ryan's mood, or my own energy. But through it all, something remarkable was happening. We were slowly becoming a family again. One afternoon, Mom had a bad day. Her breathing was labored, and she was in pain. Ryan and I immediately sprang into action, helping her to the living room and ensuring she had her medication and water. The fear that had once paralyzed us both seemed to melt into coordinated teamwork. It was a stark reminder of how far we had come. After she fell asleep, Ryan sat next to me on the couch. "Do you remember how we used to fight over stupid things?" he asked, shaking his head. I chuckled softly. "Yeah, like who got the bigger slice of cake or who got to sit in the front seat." He smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. I didn't realize how much I missed this. Family. I was so angry at her leaving, and at you sometimes too. I just didn't know how to deal with it. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're learning. We're finally learning. And it's okay to admit we were wrong, scared, or hurt. That's how we grow." Mom woke up a little later, and we helped her to the kitchen for tea. As we sat together, sipping warm drinks and watching the golden sunlight spill through the windows, it felt like the kind of quiet moment you never forget. A simple, beautiful memory that would anchor us in tough times. Weeks passed, and with each day, Mom seemed more comfortable in our home. Ryan and I became better at dividing responsibilities, supporting her, and even laughing at ourselves when things went wrong. We celebrated small victories, her making it through a difficult treatment day, cooking her favorite meal, or simply sitting outside enjoying the weather. One night, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Mom looked at us both and said softly, "I don't know how to thank you. I don't deserve this, or you too." I shook my head. "You don't have to. We're a family. That's what matters." Ryan nodded, smiling. "Yeah, Mom, we're here. All of us." Life wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension. Arguments about schedules, frustrations about health, and the occasional flare-up of old resentments. But the underlying bond was unbreakable. We had learned to communicate better, forgive faster, and support each other unconditionally. Then came a milestone I didn't think we'd ever see. Mom, with a little assistance, stood at the window and looked out at the neighborhood. "You know," she said, voice trembling, "I never realized how much I missed this. Watching the world go by with my family around me, I realized then that we had all been given a second chance. Not just to be a family, but to truly see each other, flaws and all. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future that honored our shared history while creating new, happier memories." Ryan and I began taking turns reading stories to Mom at night, sometimes reminiscing about our childhood, other times creating imaginary adventures to make her laugh. We even started planning small outings, picnics in the park, visits to her favorite cafes, and short trips to the mountains. These experiences, simple as they were, became the glue that held us together. One evening, as the three of us sat together watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of peace. The chaos of the past had shaped us, but it no longer defined us. We had forged a bond stronger than anger, resentment, or fear. Mom reached out and held our hands, squeezing them gently. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, "but I do know that being here with you both, it's enough." I looked at Ryan, then at Mom, and nodded. "It's more than enough. We're family. That's what matters." The months rolled on, each day teaching us patience, resilience, and the power of love. We celebrated birthdays, achievements, and simple joys together. Arguments still happened, of course, but they were short-lived, replaced quickly by understanding and laughter. And through it all, I learned something invaluable. Family isn't just about being related by blood. It's about showing up, forgiving, loving, and choosing each other every single day. Watching Mom and Ryan together, sharing jokes, helping each other, and creating new memories, I realized that second chances weren't just possible. They could be beautiful, healing, and life-changing. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own family, or inspired you to rebuild connections you thought were lost, don't just let the feeling fade. Share how it made you feel in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more real-life, emotional stories that explore the power of love, forgiveness, and family bonds. Let's keep discovering the beauty of human connection together. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning. I, Emma, had just finished my morning coffee and was about to leave for work when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something compelled me to answer. "Emma, it's Lily," said a shaky, barely audible voice. My heart skipped a beat. Lily was my estranged cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "Lily, what's going on?" I asked, concern lacing my tone. There was silence, then a deep sigh. I don't know who else to call. My husband, he's gone. The police said there's no one to take the kids. They said, I should call you. I froze. Lily had 2 children. No, now she had none under her care because her husband had passed unexpectedly, and she couldn't manage them. "Are you saying you want me to?" I couldn't even finish the sentence. "Yes, please, Emma. I don't know what else to do," she pleaded. I hung up, my mind racing. I wasn't close to Lily, hadn't been for years, and now she was asking me to take in her children. Ages 6 and 8. Basically strangers to me. I was 30, living alone, working long hours, and already juggling my chaotic life. And yet, something inside me stirred. I spent the day debating. I walked to the park, tried to clear my head. I thought about my own childhood, the feeling of safety when my parents were around. I thought about what it would mean for those kids to suddenly lose both parents' support. Could I do it? Could I step up? By the evening, I had made a decision. I would go to the police station and take custody of the kids, at least temporarily, until arrangements could be made. I didn't know how I would manage it, but the thought of saying no felt unbearable. That night, I drove to the station, heart pounding. I signed papers I barely understood, agreed to temporary guardianship, and received the names and photos of 2 little faces that would change my life forever. Noah and Sophie. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how this would work. How would I feed them, help them with homework, keep them safe, and somehow continue my job? And most importantly, how would I bond with children who barely knew me? By morning, I had no choice. I had agreed. I was about to become their guardian, and I had no idea what I was stepping into. The first week was chaos in its purest form. Noah and Sophie were shy, confused, and occasionally defiant. I tried to create a sense of routine, but even the simplest tasks, breakfast, getting dressed, brushing teeth, felt like navigating a minefield. Noah, the older one at 8, would often stare at me with suspicion. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was short, clipped sentences. Sophie, 6, was quieter still, clinging to a stuffed rabbit and looking to me for reassurance that everything was going to be okay. Work became a juggling act. I'd wake early to make breakfast, drop them at school, rush to my job, then pick them up again, all while trying to maintain some semblance of normal life. The exhaustion was bone deep, and some nights I'd fall asleep on the couch with homework sprawled across the coffee table and a child curled next to me. One evening, Noah burst into tears after school. "I don't want to stay here," he cried, his small body shaking. "I want Mommy and Daddy." I held him tight, trying not to cry myself. "I know, buddy. I know. But I'm here now, and I'll do my best to take care of you and Sophie. We'll get through this together." Sophie, sensing her brother's distress, grabbed my hand and whispered, "I like it here, but I miss them too." Those moments tore at my heart. I realized quickly that being a guardian wasn't just about providing food, shelter, or safety. It was about filling emotional gaps, being patient, and slowly building trust. As the weeks passed, small victories began to appear. Noah started answering questions in full sentences, smiling occasionally. Sophie laughed freely at bedtime stories I read to them, finally letting herself relax in my care. We discovered common interests: painting, building Lego sets, and Saturday morning cartoons, which helped forge a bond none of us expected so quickly. But it wasn't all smooth. Noah had nightmares, often waking screaming and calling for his parents. Sophie would refuse meals some days, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Each incident tested my patience, but I learned to stay calm, reassure them, and provide comfort without breaking down myself. I also had to face the outside world: schools, neighbors, and social services. Explaining the situation repeatedly became exhausting, but it also reinforced the reality. I was now a parent figure, a guardian, someone they could rely on. One particularly rough night, after Noah had woken screaming for the third time in an hour, I sat on the edge of my bed, exhausted. Sophie climbed into my lap, and we just held each other in silence. In that quiet moment, I realized how much I had grown in a week. My life had been turned upside down, but I was rising to meet the challenge, one tear, one hug, one small victory at a time. By the end of the month, routines were settling in. I was learning to balance work, household responsibilities, and emotional support. The kids were starting to trust me more, and I could see sparks of personality and humor emerging, signs that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. It wasn't perfect. There were still tears, arguments, and moments of self-doubt. But each night, when I tucked them into bed and saw their trusting faces, I felt a profound sense of purpose. I was their guardian now, their protector, and I knew that no matter how hard it got, I wouldn't back down. By the time the third month rolled around, life had begun to feel normal in a chaotic, unpredictable kind of way. Noah and Sophie had started referring to me as Emma instead of just the lady who lives here, and their trust in me was tangible. The shy glances and tentative gestures had been replaced with hugs, laughter, and the occasional cheeky grin. School was no longer a battlefield. Noah's teacher mentioned he had started participating in class discussions, even volunteering to help younger students. Sophie, once silent during story time, now raised her hand with answers and giggles. I watched them thrive and felt a pride I hadn't expected to feel so intensely. But challenges still came. There were days when Noah would slam doors in frustration, or Sophie would cry inconsolably over something minor, and I'd have to take deep breaths, reminding myself that these reactions were normal. They were grieving in their own ways. I couldn't solve everything, but I could provide stability and love. We started doing small family traditions. Saturday morning pancakes became a sacred ritual. We'd build forts out of blankets in the living room, watch movies together, and create little art projects. Each moment added a thread to the bond we were weaving, making our makeshift family feel more real, more permanent. One evening, as we were preparing dinner together, Noah looked up at me and said, "Emma, I'm glad you're here." My heart skipped a beat. "I'm glad I'm here too, buddy," I whispered, holding back tears. Sophie chimed in with a shy smile. "Me too." It wasn't perfect, and I knew the road ahead would continue to have bumps. But these words, these moments, made every struggle worth it. I realized that sometimes family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, care, and presence. Months later, Lily, their mother, had started communicating more. While she still couldn't take them back, she expressed gratitude and slowly began to rebuild her relationship with the children under my guidance. It was a delicate balance, but it worked. Through it all, I had learned patience, resilience, and the unexpected joy of parenting. The chaos, the tears, the laughter, all of it shaped us into a real family, forged not by circumstance, but by choice. If this story touched you, or reminded you of someone you care about, leave a comment sharing how it made you feel. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories where every twist of life brings unexpected connections. I never thought my life would change so drastically in a single summer. My name's Alex, I'm 28, and I've always considered myself independent, maybe even stubbornly so. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, lived with my mom and dad, and had a fairly normal childhood. if you ignore the fact that my parents fought constantly and my little brother, Ben, was always getting into trouble. High school wasn't easy for me. I wasn't the star athlete or the genius in class, but I got by. I had a small circle of friends, mostly people who were a little lost like me, and I cherished them more than anything. By the time I graduated, I knew two things for sure. One, I wanted to leave Ohio as soon as I could, and two, I never wanted to be tangled up in family drama again. I moved to Chicago right after college, started a modest career in marketing, and slowly carved out a life that was mine. I got a tiny apartment in the North Side, filled it with things I liked, and focused on myself. Life was peaceful, predictable, and I liked it that way. That summer, everything changed with a knock on my door. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where the sun slants just right through the blinds, painting patterns across the floor. I had just returned from a client meeting, exhausted but in a good mood, humming a song under my breath when someone rang my doorbell. When I opened it, I froze. A woman I had never seen before stood there, clutching a small suitcase, looking anxious and tired. She had striking green eyes, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, and something about her posture, like she'd been holding herself up through sheer willpower, made me uneasy. "Hi," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm your aunt. I think we need to talk." I blinked. "Aunt? I don't have any aunts here. Or do I?" She took a deep breath and said, "I know this is a lot, and I'm sorry for just showing up, but I'm your father's sister. My name's Rachel. I've been trying to find you for a long time." I felt my chest tighten. My dad had always been tight-lipped about his family. I knew he had siblings, yes, but they were distant, barely mentioned, and certainly never appeared in my life. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. I had 100 questions, and yet, something in her eyes made me want to just listen first. She entered my apartment and immediately took in the small, organized space. "Wow," she said softly. "You've done well for yourself." There was no judgment in her tone, only awe and a hint of nostalgia, maybe regret. We sat down on the couch, the silence heavy at first. Finally, she started speaking. "I'm sorry for all the years you never knew about me, for the confusion, the absence, and everything. I wanted to find you sooner, but life got in the way. There are things you need to know about your family, about your father, and about yourself." I felt my stomach twist. "What things? I mean, I don't even know where to start." She looked down at her hands, gripping the small suitcase tightly. "Let me start with your father. He's not the man you think he is. There are complications, things that happened before you were born that changed everything. And you need to know the truth." My heart started racing. "Truth about what?" Rachel paused, taking a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Your father had a life before your mom, a life he never told anyone about. You have cousins, Alex, people who are your family, your blood, and they want to meet you." I felt my head spin. Cousins? Family I had never known? The thought made me anxious and intrigued at the same time. She continued, telling me stories about my dad's siblings, their lives, and a family I never knew existed. She explained that my father had kept secrets for years, secrets he thought would protect me but had instead created a void that Rachel was now trying to fill. Over the next hour, she revealed more. My uncle had moved to another state, one cousin was in college, another had recently graduated and started a business. They were eager to connect, but cautious because they had no idea how I would react. By the time she finished, I felt overwhelmed. My carefully constructed life suddenly felt tiny compared to this sprawling, unknown family. And yet, there was a pull I couldn't ignore. A need to know them, to understand this hidden part of my life. Rachel stayed for dinner and we talked late into the night. She shared photos, stories, even letters from relatives I had never met. Each detail added layers to a picture of a family I hadn't even realized I was missing. When she left, she gave me her number and said, "Take your time, but don't wait too long. They're waiting for you, and so am I. You deserve this." I sat on my couch long after she left, staring at the photos spread across the table. Part of me was excited, part terrified. How could I open my life to people I didn't know? Could I really let them in? And what about my father? How would he react if he knew I was connecting with them now? Sleep didn't come easily that night. My mind raced with questions, scenarios, and possibilities. A family I never knew, waiting to meet me, and a chance to understand a part of myself I hadn't even known existed. I realized then that life was about to get messy, emotional, confusing, but maybe also beautiful. And I was ready to see where this unexpected journey would take me. The days after Rachel's visit were a whirlwind of emotions I didn't know how to handle. Every time I sat down at my apartment, my mind drifted to the images she had shown me. The smiling faces of cousins I'd never met, letters written by people who had longed to know me, and the stories of a father I thought I knew but clearly had hidden depths. I spent hours scrolling through the emails she had sent, reading and rereading introductions from my relatives. Each one had a slightly different tone, some formal, some casual, but all carried the same underlying excitement. They wanted me in their lives. I felt guilty. I hadn't even told my father I was in contact with Rachel yet. Dad was a private man, a stoic presence in my life who had always handled crises with quiet efficiency. But he also had secrets, and this was going to shake everything he had built. Still, I knew I had to move forward. A week later, I found myself driving to my uncle's house in Indiana. I had agreed to meet him, my cousins, and the rest of this newfound family for a weekend reunion. I told myself it would be casual, just coffee and conversation, but my stomach churned with nerves. What if they didn't like me? What if I didn't like them? The house was large, far bigger than any home I had known growing up. A welcoming smell of fresh bread and coffee greeted me at the door. And then I saw them. My uncle, tall and broad-shouldered, with a gentle smile that reminded me slightly of my father. My cousins, laughing and teasing one another, all with eyes that seemed to hold fragments of me. "Alex!" my uncle exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. It was strong, firm, and warm. "Finally, we've waited a long time for you." I blinked back tears. It was surreal. Here were people who shared my blood, my history, yet felt like strangers. "Hi," I managed, my voice tight. "It's nice to meet you all." Over the next few hours, the house buzzed with introductions, laughter, and stories. I learned that one cousin, Mia, had been in art school in New York. Another, Daniel, had recently started a tech company. And my youngest cousin, Lily, was still in high school but remarkably articulate for her age. Each had their own quirks, passions, and fears, but something about the way they welcomed me erased the awkwardness. Rachel stayed nearby, watching me interact with the family, and I noticed a soft smile on her face. She didn't need to say anything. I could see in her eyes that she was proud, relieved, and maybe a little emotional herself. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the porch with my uncle. The air was warm, scented with summer flowers, and the stars stretched endlessly above. "Alex," he said quietly, "I know this is a lot. You've lived your life without us, and now suddenly it's all here. It's okay if you feel overwhelmed." I nodded.
Ido.
I didn't even know some of these people existed, and I've been angry at my dad for keeping them from me. He sighed, leaning back. "Your father made choices he thought were best. Maybe he was protecting you, maybe not, but the past can't be changed. What matters is now, and you're here. That's what counts." I appreciated his words, but there was still a knot in my chest. I had to face my father eventually, explain why I was connecting with this family, and hope he wouldn't react with anger or hurt. The next day, we planned a picnic by the lake. I sat in a circle with my cousins, listening to their stories about growing up, about shared family quirks, and the little traditions they had kept alive. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. For the first time, I felt a part of something bigger than myself. But as the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched across the water, a tension I hadn't noticed before began to settle in. There were unspoken questions, glances exchanged between cousins, and subtle pauses that hinted at old family wounds I wasn't yet aware of. After dinner, Rachel pulled me aside. "Alex, there's something you need to know about your father and why he kept this part of the family hidden. It's complicated, and it's delicate, but you deserve the truth." I braced myself. "Okay, Tell me. She took a deep breath. Your father had an affair when he was younger, before he married your mom. It was brief, but it resulted in a child. That's your half-sibling. They've been a part of my side of the family all along. Your father kept it from everyone, including you, because he didn't want to complicate your childhood. But they've always wanted to meet you. My head spun. I hadn't expected this. A half-sibling? Another person connected to me by blood that I had never met? I felt a mix of curiosity, anger, and an odd sense of inevitability. Where are they now? I asked. Daniel, Rachel said softly. He's here, part of the gathering. You've already met him. I turned to look at Daniel, the cousin I had joked with and bonded over shared interests earlier. I had no idea. He was my half-brother. My heart raced with conflicting emotions. Excitement at discovering another family member, guilt for not knowing sooner, and fear about how this revelation would affect our growing relationship. The night ended with me lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every glance. My life had shifted in ways I couldn't have imagined. I felt the weight of the past pressing against the possibilities of the future. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring new challenges. I would have to confront my father, navigate complicated emotions, and decide how much of this newly found family I could embrace. And somehow, I had to figure out if I was ready to forgive, trust, and maybe, finally, feel whole. The morning sun crept through the blinds, casting soft streaks of light across the room. I sat on the edge of my bed, running a hand through my hair, still trying to process everything from the weekend. Meeting so many relatives I didn't know existed, discovering Daniel was my half-brother, and realizing that my father had kept so many secrets. It was a lot to handle at once. But I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever. Today, I was going to confront him. I drove to my father's house, my stomach a tight knot. Dad was tending to his garden when I arrived, looking up with a calm expression. Morning, Alex, he said casually, but I could tell he sensed something was off. Dad, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. He nodded, wiping his hands on his pants. All right, let's sit. We moved to the porch, the same place I had sat with my uncle. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've been in touch with Rachel. I met your side of the family. I met cousins I didn't even know existed. And Daniel. My voice faltered slightly. He's my half-brother, and I need to understand why you kept this from me. Dad sighed heavily, leaning back. Alex, it wasn't easy. I made choices I thought would protect you. I wanted to give you stability, a normal childhood without the complications of knowing about all this. Your mother had her own issues, and I thought it would be simpler if I just shielded you. I understand wanting to protect me, I said quietly, but hiding family, hiding Daniel, that hurt me in ways you can't imagine. I've been living with a hole in my life, wondering why certain people never reached out. And you knew why. He looked down, his hands clasped together. I know, and I regret it every day. I was scared. Scared that bringing this into your life would confuse you, that you'd resent me. But I see now that I didn't give you the chance to decide for yourself. The conversation was heavy but necessary. I felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. Finally, the truth was out in the open. I could begin to process it, to heal, to integrate this new understanding of my family into my life. Over the next few weeks, I spent more time with Rachel and the rest of the family. We had game nights, long dinners, and endless conversations. I got to know Daniel better, learning about his childhood, his hopes, and even his fears. Despite the initial shock, we bonded over shared interests, shared quirks, and shared blood. I also spent more time with my father. Our relationship, once strained and distant, began to soften. We talked about my mother, the choices he made, and the regrets he carried. I realized that while I couldn't change the past, I could influence our present and future. We were building a new understanding, layer by layer, conversation by conversation. Then came the family gathering. It was the first official event with everyone together. My father, Rachel, Daniel, Mia, Lily, and all the cousins. The house was alive with laughter, chatter, and the aroma of home-cooked meals. For the first time, I felt truly connected, part of a family that, despite years of separation and secrets, was willing to embrace me. During dinner, my father raised a toast. To family, he said, voice thick with emotion. No matter the mistakes, no matter the distance, we find our way back to each other. Glasses clinked, smiles spread, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. It wasn't perfect. There were lingering questions, unspoken resentments, and challenges ahead. But for the first time, I realized that family wasn't just about blood. It was about connection, forgiveness, and choosing to be present in each other's lives. Later that night, as I sat with Rachel and Daniel, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. We had navigated the stormy waters of the past and arrived in a place where hope, love, and understanding could grow. I thought about my journey, the pain of abandonment, the shock of revelations, and the courage it took to embrace change. Life had tested me, pushed me to my limits, and forced me to confront truths I had long avoided. But in doing so, it had also given me a gift, a family that I could choose to be part of, a chance to heal old wounds, and a new chapter filled with possibilities. If you felt this story and the journey of forgiveness, connection, and family resonated with you, leave a comment about how it made you feel. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional stories where every choice matters and every voice finds its place. It was a quiet Thursday evening when I found the envelope slipped under my apartment door. I'd just returned from work, exhausted, and wasn't expecting anything besides bills and junk mail. But this was different. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with no return address. My name was written in a familiar, shaky handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Curiosity mixed with a flicker of anxiety as I carefully opened it. Inside was a letter, folded neatly, the paper slightly worn around the edges. The letter began simply, "Alex, I know it's been a long time, too long, but I need to tell you something about your father, and about us. Please, read this all the way through." I froze. My father? About us? My mind raced. I hadn't heard from my mother in over a decade. Not since she had walked out of my life when I was 14. She had left suddenly, no warning, no explanation. Only silence. And now, here she was reaching out again. The letter continued, "I know I hurt you, and I can't change the past. But there's something you need to know. Something that could change everything you think you know about your family. I hope you'll forgive me enough to meet me. I can explain everything." I sat on the edge of my couch, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. For years, I had tried to move on, to build a life without her. I had managed okay, college, my career in graphic design, a few close friends, a modest apartment in the city. I hadn't let her absence define me. But now it felt like the past had slammed back into my life. After a long, restless night of pacing and rereading the letter, I decided I couldn't ignore it. I had questions, so many questions, that only she could answer. I wrote back cautiously, agreeing to meet at a small cafe downtown the following weekend. The day arrived, and I found myself sitting at a corner table, nervously tapping my fingers. A woman entered the cafe, older than I remembered, with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that seemed both familiar and distant. My heart raced. Could this really be her after all these years? She spotted me and paused, a mixture of relief and fear crossing her face. "Alex," she whispered. I stood slowly. "Hi," I managed, my voice unsteady. We sat, and she began to speak, words tumbling out in a rush. "I know I left. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to be a mother. But there's more, about your father, about your childhood, that you deserve to know." I listened, stunned. Secrets that had been buried for years were suddenly resurfacing, and I realized that the life I thought I understood was far more complicated than I had ever imagined. This was the beginning of a journey, one that would test my patience, my trust, and my understanding of family. The conversation at the cafe lingered in my mind long after I walked back to my apartment. My mother, Marianne, had revealed fragments of truths I never expected. My father, whom I had idolized for his unwavering presence, had been hiding something too, though unintentionally. Marianne's letter hinted at secrets, things about my family history that were carefully tucked away, waiting for me to uncover them. I spent the next few days obsessively thinking about our meeting. My apartment, usually a place of calm, felt suffocating with questions. I wanted answers, but I feared what they might be. Marianne had asked me to trust her, to allow her to explain everything in person, and yet a part of me hesitated. Could I forgive her after all this time? Could I handle the truth about my father and the life I thought I knew? Finally, I agreed to meet her again, this time at her apartment. She lived in a small, quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, a place that seemed untouched by time. When I arrived, she opened the door, and her eyes were red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said simply, but her voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. We sat at her kitchen table, and Marianne began recounting her story, starting from the beginning. She told me about her struggles with mental health during my childhood, how she felt lost and inadequate as a mother, and how she believed leaving was the only way to survive her own pain. I listened, a knot forming in my stomach. I had known she had her struggles, but hearing them laid bare made it almost tangible, like I could feel her despair. Then came the part that shocked me most. My father wasn't the man I thought he was either. Marian revealed that my father had been under immense pressure, financial, emotional, and societal, to appear perfect. He had made choices that affected me in ways I hadn't realized. Certain decisions he made, the way he handled my schooling, even the move to the city we had taken when I was 12, it all had hidden motives I was only now beginning to understand. I asked question after question, my mind racing to piece together my past. Marian answered, never dodging, never deflecting. She explained the strained relationship between her and my father, the constant arguments, and how their inability to communicate had trickled down to affect me. I realized that much of my anger toward her had been misdirected. Yes, she had left, but there were layers to that decision that I had never known. Hours passed, and the conversation took its toll. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Relief that I finally had pieces of the puzzle, heartbreak that so much of my life had been shadowed by misunderstanding and absence. Marian handed me a folder filled with old letters, photos, and documents that painted a picture of a family struggling silently, each member carrying burdens in isolation. As I sifted through the folder, one document caught my attention. A letter from my father, dated shortly before he passed away. He wrote about his regrets, his love for both Marianne and me, and his fear that he had failed as a parent. The words hit me harder than I expected. My father had carried guilt silently, just as Marianne had carried her pain. By the end of the evening, I felt a strange sense of closure and the beginnings of understanding. The wounds weren't healed, not by a long shot, but for the first time in my life, I saw my parents not just as flawed humans, but as individuals who had loved me in the only ways they knew how. Marian looked at me with weary eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight," she said softly, "but I hope we can start again. I want to be part of your life, however you let me." I nodded slowly. "We'll see," I replied. My heart was conflicted, but I felt the stirrings of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The days after my meeting with Marianne were a whirlwind of reflection. I found myself replaying every word she had said, every expression on her face. There was something oddly comforting about finally knowing the full story. Painful as it was, but also terrifying. Could I truly forgive her? Could I allow her into my life after everything? I decided to take it slow. We began with small gestures. A text here, a call there. I learned about her routines, her struggles with treatment, and her quiet resilience. It was strange. Having someone I barely knew yet felt like I had always missed. Marianne wasn't just my mother. She was a person, and getting to know her felt like exploring a hidden room in my own home that had been locked for years. One Saturday, she suggested we go through some old family albums. Sitting side by side on my couch, flipping through pictures, I felt a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. Childhood birthdays, family vacations, candid shots of my father smiling with us. Memories I had forgotten or never fully experienced. She laughed softly, a sound I had only imagined in dreams, and for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to smile genuinely with her. But it wasn't all easy. Old wounds surfaced. Arguments erupted over trivial things. Yet each disagreement was a doorway to understanding. Marianne was not perfect, nor was I, but the process of confronting our past pains allowed us to see each other as we truly were. Slowly, the barriers that had kept us apart began to crumble. I also began to realize how her absence had shaped me. I saw patterns in my relationships, my fears of abandonment, and my tendency to push people away. With Marianne's guidance and frankness, I confronted these patterns head-on. Therapy, which I had initially resisted, became a tool for processing years of buried emotions. Months passed, and a new routine emerged. Marianne came over for weekly dinners. We cooked together, shared stories, and sometimes just sat in silence, enjoying each other's company. My home, once a place of solitary peace, now echoed with the warmth of shared laughter and conversation. One evening, we sat by the fireplace, a soft glow illuminating the room. She looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "I never thought I'd have a chance to be your mother again," she said quietly. I reached for her hand. "You don't get to erase the past, but we can make the future better," I replied. That night, I reflected on everything: the anger, the resentment, the guilt, and now the tentative hope. Life had thrown us both into painful circumstances, but we were navigating them together. There was no rushing the healing, no pretending the past didn't hurt, but there was growth, connection, and the possibility of genuine family. And as I sit here now, writing this down, I realize that forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a series of choices, small steps, and acts of understanding. It's messy, complicated, and often painful, but it's also beautiful. If you felt the depth of the story, felt the raw emotions of reconciliation and family bonds, share your thoughts in the comments and make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are countless stories like this, real, emotional, and life-changing, waiting to be shared with you. Don't miss out on the journeys that remind us of the power of connection and the resilience of the human heart. The first time I realized my life was about to change was a Tuesday morning, but it didn't feel like anything out of the ordinary at first. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. "Hello. Hi, is this Max Thompson?" A soft, trembling voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" I replied, a bit wary. "My name's Clara Reynolds. I think I need your help." Her words hung in the air, heavy and urgent. I frowned, trying to place the name. Nothing came to mind. I'm your biological sister," she said. I froze. My coffee sloshed over the edge, barely missing the counter. My sister? I had always known I was adopted. My parents had told me when I was 8, after a messy custody situation, but the details were fuzzy. My mind raced, questions, doubts, disbelief. "Wait, you're saying you're?" I stammered. "Yes, I was adopted too around the same time. We were separated at birth, and I just found you." The next few minutes were a blur. She explained how she had been searching for me for years, piecing together fragments from old records, social media, and distant relatives. She wanted to meet. She needed to meet me. I was hesitant. Fear, curiosity, and a strange sense of excitement collided inside me. After long deliberation, I agreed to meet her in a neutral place, an old cafe downtown that had been a local fixture for decades. When I arrived, I saw her immediately. Clara had curly brown hair, glasses slightly askew, and a nervous smile that mirrored my own apprehension. Her eyes, hazel like mine, stared at me with the intensity of someone meeting a missing piece of their life. "Max?" she asked softly. "That's me," I said, heart pounding. She took a deep breath and sat down. "I know this is overwhelming. I wanted to see you, to know you exist, to know I'm not alone." I nodded, feeling an unexpected lump in my throat. She wasn't just a stranger. She was family. Over the next hour, we exchanged stories, tentative and cautious at first. We laughed awkwardly, compared childhood memories, and shared dreams we had each held onto quietly. She told me about her foster families, the heartbreak of feeling lost, and the quiet hope that one day she'd find me. I told her about my life, my job, my friends, my quiet routines. And though we had been apart for 29 years, a thread of connection started weaving itself between us, fragile but unmistakable. That evening, after she left, I sat on my porch and replayed every detail. Couldn't sleep, thoughts swirled. What did it mean for my life? Could I trust her? Could I let someone I'd never known become a part of my family now? The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A message from Clara. I know it's sudden. I just want to be part of your life if you'll let me. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Let's take it slow. We'll see where this goes. I didn't know it yet, but this was the first step in a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and love. The days turned into weeks. Clara and I texted constantly, shared photos, memories, and bits of our lives. She told me about the small victories and struggles she faced. Finding a stable job, making new friends, learning to trust adults again. And I shared my world, my quiet routines, my favorite spots in the city, the little habits that defined me. One rainy evening, she called. Max, can I come over tomorrow? I think I need to see your place to feel more connected. I hesitated. My apartment was small, cozy, but private. My sanctuary. Allowing her inside felt like inviting someone into the most vulnerable parts of my life. I don't know, Clara, I admitted. I'm not sure if I'm ready. I understand, she said gently. I want to know you more. That's all. I took a deep breath. There was something about her honesty, her humility, that made my defenses soften. Okay, tomorrow, I said, and that was the beginning of something I couldn't have anticipated. An intricate, emotional journey that would test trust, loyalty, and the bonds of family in ways I had never imagined. By the time she arrived, the air between us had changed. It was no longer cautious, no longer awkward. It was tentative hope, a fragile belief that we could find in each other what we had both been missing all our lives. The evening was filled with long conversations, laughter that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, and moments of silence that were comfortable rather than tense. For the first time in years, I felt that perhaps family wasn't just about blood. It was about connection, trust, and shared understanding. And yet, as I watched her leave, a quiet apprehension settled in my chest. The road ahead was uncharted, and I had no idea what challenges awaited. But one thing was certain. My life, as I knew it, would never be the same again. If this story touched you, if you felt the tentative hope, the longing, and the small victories, then share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories about family, love, and unexpected reunions. The morning after Clara's visit, the apartment felt emptier than usual. Her presence had lingered like a soft perfume, unobtrusive, comforting, and slightly intoxicating. I realized how much I had underestimated the power of just having someone who shared my past in the same room. I spent the day distracted, flipping between emails at work and memories of our conversation. Her laugh echoed in my mind, the way it started quietly, almost shyly, and then spilled into the room with unrestrained warmth. There was a familiarity to it, even though we had just met. Later that week, Clara suggested a small outing. Max, she said over the phone, I thought maybe we could explore some old neighborhoods, places we might have grown up in. Could be interesting. I hesitated. Nostalgia was a tricky thing. Could be painful, but curiosity won. Okay, let's do it Saturday, I replied. Saturday arrived with an overcast sky and a light drizzle. We drove through streets lined with red brick houses, small parks, and corner stores that had seen generations pass by. Clara pointed out buildings, saying, "This could have been the house I stayed in for a few months before my foster placement." I nodded, noticing how her eyes shimmered with memories I couldn't fully access. "It's small but cozy," I said. She smiled faintly. "Sometimes small is enough as long as there's care." The hours slipped by. We wandered into a quaint bookstore, the smell of old pages mingling with the rain outside. We browsed sections haphazardly, occasionally comparing books we had loved as kids. It was absurd, almost comical, that after nearly 30 years apart, we could bond over shared experiences we hadn't shared. During lunch at a nearby cafe, Clara's phone buzzed. She frowned, hesitated, then looked up at me. "It's my adoptive mother. She wants to meet me. It's my foster brother. He's in trouble. He's part of my past, and I can't face it alone." Despite the apprehension, I agreed. I drove across the city, the rain streaking the windshield as I rehearsed what I might say, how I might help, and how to keep myself grounded in the chaos that was about to unfold. When we arrived, I saw him, Danny, a wiry young man with haunted eyes and a nervous twitch. Clara rushed to him, and I hung back, studying the scene. It was messy, emotional, and raw. He had been in trouble with the law, caught in a spiral of bad decisions that even Clara had struggled to prevent. "Max," she whispered, gripping my arm. "I need you to be here. Just stay with me. Help me navigate this." I nodded, my mind racing but my heart certain. This wasn't just her story anymore. This was our story, and it demanded courage, patience, and empathy. We spent hours negotiating, consoling, and planning next steps. By the end of the night, Danny had agreed to enter a rehabilitation program. Clara turned to me, tears streaming down her face, exhausted but relieved. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said. "You didn't have to," I replied softly, realizing that she had, in a way, given me a purpose I hadn't expected. Driving back, the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windshield. My mind replayed every conversation, every moment of tension and triumph. This is what family felt like. Complicated, messy, beautiful, and sometimes painfully raw. We arrived at my apartment late, drenched but strangely invigorated. She looked at me, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. "Thank you, Max, really." I nodded. "We're family now. That's what matters." Later, alone in my apartment, I sat down with my journal and wrote. I didn't fully understand what the next chapter would hold, but I knew one thing. With Clara in my life, the ordinary had transformed into extraordinary. The mundane had become vibrant, and every decision carried weight. Every moment had depth. The next morning, the city seemed quieter somehow, the rain having washed the streets clean, leaving everything glistening under the weak sunlight. Clara stayed over the previous night, and I watched her sleep for a moment before getting up. The calm before the storm, I thought, though neither of us knew what storm awaited. Danny's situation had stirred something deeper than just responsibility. It had brought buried emotions to the surface. Clara's face, tired yet determined, replayed in my mind. I knew the next step wasn't just about helping him. It was about protecting her and myself emotionally while navigating the tangled web of our family history. We spent the day arranging therapy sessions for Danny and connecting him with local support systems. Watching Clara interact with him, guiding him patiently but firmly, I realized how resilient she had become. The little girl who had once feared abandonment had grown into someone fiercely protective, empathetic, and remarkably strong. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights flickering like tiny stars below. Clara leaned her head against my shoulder.
"Max,
"I don't know how I would have survived this without you," she whispered. "You didn't have to," I said again, though this time the words carried the weight of everything we'd endured together. We survived together. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of completion, like the missing pieces of my life were slowly finding their places. The past would always be a part of us, but it no longer dictated our present or future. In the following weeks, life settled into a rhythm. Danny thrived in his program, Clara and I continued to navigate our reconnection, and I finally understood the meaning of chosen family. Those who step in when the world has turned its back. Those who hold you up when you're weakest. One evening, Clara turned to me after a quiet dinner. "Max, I've realized something. Family isn't just about blood. It's about those who show up, those who stay, and those who fight for you." I smiled, feeling the truth in her words. "And we fight together, I replied. Our bond deepened, not just as siblings or friends, but as two people who had found each other against all odds, who had faced the past shadows and emerged stronger. The scars remained, but they no longer defined us. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything: the pain, the reconciliation, the newfound connection. Life was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel, but it was also beautiful in its complexity. And with Clara in my life, it was richer, fuller, and infinitely more meaningful. If this story touched you, made you feel the weight of family ties and second chances, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories that stay with you long after you've heard them.